She couldn't handle real combat. Eric said it into a live microphone. He gave a small laugh afterward, like he'd made a harmless joke. A few people near the front shifted in their chairs. Nobody laughed with him. I was standing beside a folding table in the simulation center at Monadnock Community Hospital. There were 2 plastic trauma kits open in front of me. One had a torn pressure dressing hanging over the edge. The projector behind Eric showed our company name in tall blue letters. Granite Resolve, LLC. My company. At least, that was what the paperwork said. Eric held out one hand toward me. Carrie handles the administrative side, he added. She's very good at keeping us organized. That was his way of cleaning up the first sentence. Make me sound useful. Make me sound safe. Across the room, a man in a dark gray jacket had stopped writing. His hand rested on a yellow legal pad. I could see the old medic insignia pinned near his collar. He looked at Eric. Then he looked at me. I knew that face. It had changed, of course. There was gray in his beard. He wore glasses now. But I knew him. Eric didn't notice. He turned back toward the hospital committee. As I was saying, the key is decisive leadership. I lowered my eyes to the leather portfolio beneath my hand. The certification inside was still unsigned. Eric believed I was going to take care of that before the deadline. He believed a lot of things that evening. To explain how my husband ended up dismissing my service in a room where one man knew exactly what I'd done, I have to go back 3 weeks. Our office sat on Old Street Road in Peterborough, above a plumbing supply store. It wasn't impressive. We had 2 rooms, one narrow hallway, and a break area with a microwave that smelled like burned popcorn. Eric had chosen the building because the rent was low. I liked it because the front windows faced east. In winter, morning light came across my desk before it reached his. We started Granite Resolve in 2018. I'd been out of the Army for 2 years by then. I served 18 years and completed 3 combat deployments. I didn't talk about them much. Most days, they didn't seem connected to the woman answering emails beside a humming copier. Eric was better at talking. He could walk into a room with 5 strangers and leave with 6 business cards. He knew how to make our small firm sound established without telling a direct lie. At least that was what I believed then. I handled operations. I built our training plans, reviewed emergency procedures, and made sure our instructors taught what we promised clients. Eric handled sales, presentations, and most public meetings. On paper, I owned the majority of Granite Resolve. That wasn't a gift from Eric. We structured it that way because I brought the experience, the training material, and the veteran qualification. He brought business contacts and the confidence to ask people for money. For several years, the arrangement worked. Then the hospital opportunity came along. Monadnock Community Hospital wanted a firm to rebuild its emergency preparedness program. The work covered staff training, casualty simulations, evacuation procedures, and response planning. The contract was worth $480,000. For us, that was enormous. Our usual jobs were small. A nursing center might hire us for a 2-day exercise. A warehouse might pay for an evacuation review. We had 4 regular employees and several instructors we used when needed. Some months were comfortable. Some months I moved invoices around my desk and waited for a check to clear. The hospital contract could keep everyone working for more than a year. Eric printed the request for proposals and carried it into my office like he'd won something already. "This is the one," he said. He dropped the packet on my desk. I looked at the first page. "We haven't submitted anything." "I know. I'm saying this is the one we've been building toward." He pulled my guest chair closer. The legs scraped across the floor. "They're giving preference to qualifying veteran-owned firms," he said. "That puts us ahead before we walk in. Preference isn't a guarantee. It's an advantage, only if the rest of the proposal is solid." He smiled. "That's why I have you." At the time, it sounded affectionate. I spent the next 12 days building the operational plan. I worked at the office until 7 most nights. I mapped training groups, instructor hours, equipment costs, and realistic emergency scenarios. Eric worked late too, mostly in the conference room. I could hear him practicing sections of the presentation. Sometimes he asked me to listen. Sometimes he closed the door. The first small thing I noticed was my biography. We kept standard biographies for proposals. Mine described my Army service, deployments, emergency planning work, and the training programs I'd developed after leaving. The version Eric put into the hospital proposal was shorter. It said I was a co-founder who provided administrative oversight. I read the sentence twice. Then I walked into his office with the page. What happened to the rest of this? Eric didn't look up from his laptop. The bios were too long. Yours is almost a full page. I'm the presenter. You listed yourself as lead operational strategist. That made him look up. I am leading this project. If we win it. Yes, Carrie, if we win it. His voice had that tired edge he used when he wanted me to feel unreasonable. I set the page beside his keyboard. You didn't build the emergency program. I didn't say I built every piece. You called it your program. It's the company's program. Then why does the proposal call it yours? Eric leaned back. Because a proposal needs one clear voice. I waited. He rubbed both hands over his face. Can we not do this tonight? Do what? Turn every wording decision into a marriage problem. I hadn't mentioned our marriage. That was the first time he used it as a shield. I took the page back to my desk. I could have changed it in the shared proposal. I had access. But the submission copy was under Eric's name, and he'd already warned everyone that he was controlling final edits. So I sent him an email. It was simple. My biography is inaccurate. I do not provide only administrative oversight. Please restore the operational duties and service information from the approved company biography before submission. I copied our general company account. That mattered later. Eric came into my office 6 minutes after I sent it. Why would you put that in writing? Because I asked you to correct a written proposal. You could have talked to me. I did. He closed my door. The little room became quiet except for the copier outside. You know what hospital committees are like, he said. They don't want to hear two people claiming authority. I'm not claiming anything. Then what are we arguing about? The truth. He stared at me for a second. Then he softened his voice. Carrie, I need you to trust me on presentation, and I need the proposal to be accurate. It will be accurate enough. I didn't answer. He reached for the doorknob. We're trying to protect 4 jobs here. The door clicked shut behind him. That sentence stayed with me. Not because it was wrong. 4 people did depend on us. I knew what they earned. I knew which one had a furnace repair that winter and which one needed steady hours because his wife's work was seasonal. But Eric had made a wording choice. Then he handed me the weight of everyone's paycheck. 2 days later, he submitted the proposal. He told me he'd fix the biography. I should have checked immediately. I didn't. That's the part I still have to own. I was preparing a workshop in Keene that morning. One instructor had called in sick, and a client had changed the room layout without telling us. By the time I got back, Eric said the hospital submission was complete. Did you restore my bio? I asked. I cleaned it up. That's not what I asked. It reflects your role. I stood beside his desk. Eric, yes, I fixed it. I believed him. A week later, Holly Jennings from the hospital called. She introduced herself as the procurement director. Her voice was direct but not unfriendly. Granite Resolve has been selected as one of 3 finalists, she said. I looked through the glass wall toward Eric's office. He was on another call, pacing behind his desk. That's good news, I said. It is. I need both owners at the finalist briefing on Thursday. Both? Yes. There are ownership and control requirements tied to your preference status. I'll explain them at the briefing. I wrote that down. Ownership and control requirements. I already knew what those words usually meant. We'd completed veteran owner certifications for earlier contracts. Most were routine. I signed because the statements were true. I exercised operational control. I approved training standards. I managed delivery. I had access to the company records, authority over the work, and the ability to make decisions without Eric's permission. At least I had when Granite Resolve began. I opened our locked file drawer and pulled out the leather portfolio I used for formal documents. The corners were worn and one brass fastener had a scratch across it. I placed it on my desk. When Eric finished his call, I told him about the briefing. He smiled so quickly that I knew he'd been waiting. Holly emailed me yesterday. I looked at him. You knew? She said she'd contact you. You could have mentioned it. I'm mentioning it now. No, I'm mentioning it now. His smile tightened. Fine. Yes, we're finalists. Why do they need both owners there? It's procurement. They love meetings. She specifically mentioned control requirements. Eric picked up his coffee mug. Standard paperwork. Then why didn't you send it to me? What paperwork? The finalist documents. They're still organizing them. He took a drink, though the mug had been empty all morning. I watched him set it down. That was when I started paying attention. Thursday's briefing was held in a conference room at the hospital. Holly had arranged 3 packets at each place. Eric sat at the head of our side of the table. I sat beside him. Holly was 43, though I learned that later. She wore a navy jacket and kept her reading glasses on a cord around her neck. She didn't waste time. The finalist showcase is in 2 weeks, she said. Each firm will present its plan and complete a live emergency scenario. She tapped the second page. The showcase ends at 8 in the evening. All certifications are due by that time. No corrections or late submissions will be accepted. Eric nodded. I turned the page. There it was, a veteran owner operational control certification. The form required my signature, not Eric's. By signing it, I would personally certify that I exercised actual control over the firm's daily operations and the work being offered to the hospital. Holly looked at me. Ms. Stewart, do you have any questions about that requirement? Does a missing signature affect the entire proposal? Yes. Without the qualifying owner's certification, the bid is ineligible. Only this bid, only this procurement. Eric shifted beside me. Holly continued, the selected firm will be paid according to the schedule in the draft agreement. The total contract value is $480,000. Eric's knee moved under the table. Once, then again. I placed the certification inside my leather portfolio. Holly walked us through the showcase schedule. Eric would open. I would explain implementation and staff training. Then we'd conduct the casualty response exercise. My name was printed beside a 10-minute speaking segment. On the drive back to Old Street Road, Eric kept one hand on the wheel and talked about lighting, slides, and what suit he should wear. I watched wet snow gather along the road. You told me the certification was standard paperwork, I said. It is. It depends on operational control, and you're the majority owner. That isn't the same thing. He glanced at me. Don't start looking for problems. I asked one question. You asked Holly 3. Because I wanted 3 answers. He exhaled through his nose. Everyone in that room wants the contract, Carrie. We need to look confident. We need to be accurate. We are accurate. I turned toward him. Then there's nothing to worry about. He didn't answer. When we reached the office, Eric went upstairs first. I stayed in the parking lot and waited until he disappeared through the side door. Then I opened my portfolio. I took out the certification and read every line again. One sentence referred to the firm's submitted description of management authority. That description was in an attachment I hadn't seen. Upstairs, Eric was already on a call. I went to my desk, opened the hospital proposal folder, and found the final submitted copy. My access still worked. The biography had not been corrected. Below it was an organizational chart I had never approved. Eric's name sat at the top. Mine appeared off to the side under administrative support. I printed both pages. Then I printed the certification. The copier was loud enough that Eric looked through his glass wall. I met his eyes and held the pages until the machine finished. Then I placed all 3 inside my leather portfolio and locked it in my desk. Eric waited until the last employee left. I heard the front door close downstairs. A minute later, he came into my office and pulled the door shut behind him. What did you print? You saw what I printed. I saw 3 pages. The biography, the chart, and the certification. He looked at my desk drawer. You locked them up? Yes. Why? Because the certification is mine to sign. I know that. Then why do you care where I put it? His jaw tightened. I don't like the way you're acting. I sat back in my chair. How am I acting? Suspicious. You told me you corrected my biography. I did correct it. You left out my work. I shortened it. You reduced my role to administrative support. That doesn't mean you only answer phones. That's exactly what the chart suggests. Eric took his glasses off. He cleaned them with the bottom of his shirt, though there wasn't anything on the lenses. The committee needs a clear chain of command. They asked for the real chain of command. I'm president, and I control operations. He put his glasses back on. On the technical side, what other side of operations is there? Carrie, this is what I mean. You get stuck on one phrase and refuse to see the whole picture. The whole picture has your name above mine, because somebody has to lead the presentation. The chart isn't a presentation schedule. He opened his mouth, then stopped. I waited for an answer. Instead, he reached for the chair across from me and sat down. We've been married 24 years, he said. I looked at him. We've built a life together. We built this company together. Why are you talking to me like I'm some stranger trying to cheat you? I asked. Why the chart is false? It isn't false. Then explain it. He leaned forward. I bring in the work. I manage client relationships. I make the financial decisions. I set the direction of the company. You don't make financial decisions alone, not technically. There it was again, technically. The word people use when the truth is inconvenient. I turned my chair toward the window. The plumbing store's delivery truck was backing out below us. Its warning signal beeped every few seconds. Eric lowered his voice. Look, I know this contract means something different to you. What does that mean? The veteran preference. It means we qualify. I know, I'm saying I understand why you're sensitive about how your role appears. I turned back. I'm not sensitive about an appearance. The proposal makes a factual claim, and I'm telling you the hospital doesn't care who approves a training schedule. They care enough to require my signature. His face changed for half a second. Then he smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the one he used with difficult clients. Which you'll provide. I didn't answer. He stood. We should go home. I have work to finish. You always have work to finish. So do you. Yeah, but I know when to stop. He walked out and left my door open. I stayed another hour. Most of that time, I didn't work. I looked through the final proposal and compared it with the draft I'd prepared. My training plan was there. My staffing schedule was there. The casualty response exercise was built from my notes. Even the sequence of events came from an old tabletop scenario I'd designed years earlier. My name appeared 14 times. 11 of those were in the ownership forms. Twice I was listed as administrative support. The last one was in my shortened biography. Eric's name appeared throughout the operational plan. He was described as the person who would direct implementation, approve instructors, modify exercises, and make final decisions during delivery. Those were my duties. At home, Eric was in the kitchen heating soup when I came through the back door. We lived in a small cape a few miles from the office. We'd bought it after my second deployment. The floors tilted near the stairs, and the kitchen drawers stuck during humid weather. I loved that house. For years, it had been the place I pictured when I was away. Not the whole thing, just ordinary pieces. The chipped tile by the sink, the cedar smell in the upstairs closet, Eric standing at the counter with one sock on because he could never get dressed in the right order. That evening, he had set 2 bowls on the table. Chicken and rice, he said. Thanks. I put bread in the oven. I took off my coat and hung it by the door. We ate without talking about the proposal. That was another pattern in our marriage. Eric could close an argument whenever he wanted. He just started behaving normally. He asked if the office printer needed toner. I said it probably did. He told me the neighbor's recycling bin had blown into our driveway. I said I'd seen it. Then he reached across the table and touched my wrist. You know I respect you, right? I looked at his hand. Do I? His fingers moved away. Come on, I'm asking. Of course I respect you. Why is my role wrong in the proposal? He dropped his napkin beside his bowl. I thought we were having dinner. We are. I don't want to fight through every meal. Neither do I. Then let it go until tomorrow. When tomorrow? After the staff meeting. We have a client call after the staff meeting. Then after that, you're presenting at the chamber dinner. He pushed his chair back. This is exactly what you do. What? You keep going until there's no acceptable answer. There's an acceptable answer. Correct the proposal. It's already submitted. Send an amendment. That would make us look disorganized. We are disorganized if our own proposal can't describe our roles. He carried his bowl to the sink. You know what I think? I waited. I think part of you is still angry that people call me first. I stared at him. He turned on the faucet. You're good at what you do, Carrie. Better than good. But you hate sales. You hate networking. You don't like speaking to a room unless you're teaching something. Then you get upset because clients see me as the face of the company. I'm not upset that they see your face. You know what I mean? No, I don't. He rinsed his bowl too hard. Water splashed across the counter. You want recognition without doing the part that gets recognized. For a moment, neither of us moved. The oven timer sounded. Eric turned it off and took out the bread. I looked at the table between us. My soup was getting a thin skin across the top. When I left the Army, I had trouble explaining what I wanted. I didn't miss sleeping badly. I didn't miss carrying everything I needed. I didn't miss the weeks when one phone call home had to last. What I missed was knowing where I stood. People had clear duties. If something was mine, I owned it. If I made a mistake, someone told me directly. If someone else used my work, they didn't pretend it came from nowhere. Civilian life was softer around the edges. At first, I thought I was the problem. Eric seemed comfortable everywhere. At dinners, he knew when to interrupt and when to laugh. He could tell the same story 3 times and make it sound new. When we started Granite Resolve, I let him go first. The first time a client praised one of my training plans, Eric said, "We worked hard on that." I noticed the word "we," but I didn't correct him. Later, another client asked how Eric had developed our evacuation model. He said, "It took a lot of trial and error." I was sitting beside him. I could have spoken. I didn't. In the car afterward, he said, "Thanks for not making that awkward. I told him it was fine. It hadn't been fine. It had just been easier." Standing in our kitchen, I could see how many times I'd chosen easier. I had wanted Granite Resolve to feel like a shared home after the Army. I wanted Eric to need what I knew. I wanted the business to prove that we could build something together after spending so much of our marriage adapting to my absences. So I fixed problems quietly. When he promised a client a training date we couldn't support, I adjusted the schedule. When he described an exercise he didn't understand, I built one that matched his description. When an instructor called him with a technical question, he handed me the phone. Then he sent the follow-up email under his own name. Each time, I told myself the company mattered more than credit. Now, the hospital proposal said he controlled the work because I'd spent years making his claims come true. Eric wrapped the bread and placed it on the counter. "You're not eating?" "I'm not hungry." He nodded toward my bowl. "Put it in the fridge, at least." That was as close as he came to ending the argument. The next morning, we held our weekly staff meeting. There were only 4 employees, so we met around the conference table with coffee and paper cups. Eric stood beside the television and showed the hospital presentation. My name appeared on the agenda for implementation and staff training. He clicked past it quickly. One of our instructors, Ben, raised a hand. "Who's running the casualty scenario?" "I am," Eric said. Ben looked at me. I thought Carrie designed it. She did the first draft. I kept my eyes on the screen. The scenario involved a vehicle striking a covered entrance during a winter power failure. Hospital staff would need to secure the area, sort casualties, and maintain access for emergency vehicles. Eric's slide instructed the response leader to move all available staff toward the entrance immediately. That was wrong. It crowded the danger area and left nobody managing the rest of the building. I waited until he finished speaking. "You need to change the initial response," I said. Eric held the remote against his palm. "To what?" "Establish control away from the entrance. Send a small assessment team. Keep the main access lane clear. It's a simulation. The decision still needs to be realistic. We can refine it later. The showcase is judging how we make decisions." Ben turned toward the screen. "Carrie's right. If everyone runs to the entrance, you lose accountability." Eric glanced at him. Then he clicked back one slide. "Fine," he said. "Carrie, send me the exact wording." That was the small piece of truth I needed. In private, my judgment was inconvenient. In front of someone who understood the work, Eric used it immediately. He changed the slide while we watched. "Establish remote command," he read as he typed. "Deploy limited assessment team. Maintain emergency access." Then he smiled at the room. "That's why we rehearse." The meeting moved on. Afterward, Ben stopped beside my desk. "Are you still doing the implementation section?" "As far as I know." "Good. That part needs you." He said it plainly. Then he left to load equipment for an afternoon class. I sat down and opened the proposal history. The system recorded every saved version. I found the draft containing my full biography. It had been saved under my name. The next version showed the shortened biography and new organizational chart. Eric had made those changes the night after my email. Not before I objected. After. I downloaded both versions and saved them with the submission copy. I also saved my email asking him to correct the record. I wasn't building a case against a stranger. I was documenting my own marriage. That was the cost I hadn't expected. Around noon, Eric sent me the updated showcase slides. He'd used my correction in the casualty scenario. My name was still missing from the slide. I started to add it. Then I stopped. I returned the file with one comment beside the corrected procedure. Identify the operational author and decision authority accurately before final review. For once, I didn't fix the rest for him. He answered the comment 10 minutes later. "Please don't add internal notes to client-facing materials. I'll handle attribution during rehearsal." I read it twice. Then I opened the hospital email from Holly. Her signature included a direct number. I picked up the phone before I could talk myself out of it. Holly Jennings. "Hi, Holly, it's Carrie Stewart." "Carrie, hello. What can I do for you?" "I need access to the final proposal as the hospital received it." There was a short pause. "You don't have access?" "I have our internal copy. I want to confirm it matches the file in your portal." "That's reasonable. Eric is listed as the primary contact. I'm the qualifying owner." "Yes, you are." I could hear her typing. "I can add you as an authorized contact," she said. "The portal should send you a link within a few minutes. Thank you. Is there a specific issue you're checking?" I looked through the glass wall. Eric was standing in the conference room. He had his back to me and one hand pressed to his ear. "Role descriptions," I said. "Do you mean the project team biographies?" "Those, and the management description." "All right." She stopped typing. "Carrie, I want to be careful here. The hospital doesn't dictate how a private company divides every task, but your preference status depends on actual control by the qualifying veteran owner. That's broader than having a majority percentage on paper. I understand. The certification is personal. It isn't something the president can sign for you. I understand that too. Good. I'll send the link." I thanked her and hung up. The portal email arrived before I put down the receiver. My deliberate move had worked. I now had direct access to every file Eric had submitted. I didn't have to ask him what the hospital had seen. There were 14 documents. I downloaded them one at a time and compared them with our internal folder. Most matched. The insurance certificate was current. The pricing sheet used the figures I had approved. The instructor qualifications were accurate. Then I opened a file called Management Capacity. It wasn't in our internal proposal folder. The first section described Eric as the company's daily executive. That was fair. He was president. The next section said he controlled all staffing, training delivery, client commitments, and operational changes. That wasn't fair. It said I supported record keeping, veteran compliance, and quality review. Quality review sounded substantial until you read the next sentence. It said I could recommend changes to Eric, who retained final approval. I had never agreed to that. The last page included a simple diagram. It was cleaner than the organizational chart I'd printed, but the meaning was the same. Every operational line ran through Eric. My box sat beside his with no staff beneath it. At the bottom was an upload statement showing the document had been added 2 hours before the proposal deadline. I checked the date. That was the same evening Eric told me he'd corrected my biography. I printed the management file. The copier started, and Eric looked through the conference room glass again. This time, I didn't look back. I placed the pages beside the certification. One document said Eric held final operational authority. The other required me to certify that I did. I understood the inconsistency. What I didn't understand was how far Eric had carried it inside our own business. I had spent years doing the work, but control wasn't just work. It was the right to decide what happened when we disagreed. Until then, most of our disagreements had been small enough for me to solve around him. That afternoon, Ben came into my office holding a torn training vest. "This one's finished," he said. The shoulder strap had separated from the fabric. It was part of a weighted casualty mannequin we used in lifting exercises. Did it tear during class? Last group. I stitched it twice, but it won't hold. I turned the vest over. We need a replacement before the hospital rehearsal. I found one from the same supplier. How much? Just under $600. Order it. Ben didn't leave. What? He shifted the vest under his arm. Eric said purchases go through him now. Since when? Beginning of the month. Did he send that in writing? Not to me. He told us at the Monday meeting. I thought back. I'd missed that meeting because I was leading a training session in Jaffrey. What exactly did he say? That we should send purchase requests to him until the hospital decision. Did he say why? Cash control. I opened our equipment budget. We had more than enough in the approved training line. Send me the supplier link. He hesitated. Should I copy Eric? No, send it to me. Ben nodded and went back to the storage room. The email arrived a minute later. I opened the supplier page, confirmed the vest matched our equipment, and approved the purchase through our company system. The approval went through. That was useful. Whatever Eric had told the staff, he hadn't removed my system access. I printed the order confirmation and placed it on the left side of my desk. At 4 that afternoon, the supplier called. A woman asked for Eric. He's in a meeting, I said. Can I help? I'm calling about the replacement vest. We received an approval and then a hold. A hold from whom? Eric Miles. I looked at the confirmation page. What reason did he give? He asked us not to process any purchases unless he confirms them personally. When did he make that request? About 20 minutes ago. Did he cancel the order? No, he placed it on hold. Thank you. Leave it there for now. After the call, I walked into the conference room. Eric was alone, rearranging slides on the television. Why did you hold the vest order? He kept looking at the screen. Because we don't need it. The current one is torn. Ben can repair it. He already tried. Then use another one. They're different weights. He clicked a slide into place. We're not spending $600 to make a practice dummy look nice. It isn't cosmetic. The strap can fail during a lift. We'll tape it. No. That made him turn. No? We aren't using damaged equipment. Fine. Don't use it. The scenario requires it. Then change the scenario. The scenario is in the proposal. Eric set the remote on the table. Do you hear yourself? Yes, we are waiting on a contract that could change this company, and you're making a stand over a vest. You created a purchase rule without telling me. I asked people to control spending. You told them every purchase requires your approval, temporarily. Why wasn't I told? Because I assumed you'd understand. I approved the purchase. And I put it on hold, which means my approval doesn't count. His face went still. For a second, I thought he might deny it. Instead, he folded his arms. Right now, no. Not for new spending. You represented to the hospital that you control final operational decisions. I wrote that I lead the company. You wrote that you have final approval over training delivery and staffing. Where did you get that? The hospital portal. He stared at me. Holly gave you access? I asked for it. You went around me. I accessed our own proposal. I'm the primary contact. I'm the qualifying owner. Eric walked to the conference room door and checked the hallway. Nobody was there. He closed it anyway. You need to be very careful, he said. With what? With how you communicate with the hospital. I asked for access. You told her there was a problem. I said I was checking role descriptions. His hand tightened around the remote. Why would you say that? Because I was checking role descriptions. Do you understand how that sounds? It sounds like an owner reading her proposal. It sounds like we aren't aligned. We aren't. He put the remote down again. All right, what do you want? An accurate proposal. We can't replace the submission. Then an accurate showcase. Fine. And the purchase hold removed. Not until the award decision. You don't have authority to suspend mine. I'm president. That doesn't make you my supervisor. It makes me responsible for keeping the lights on. I moved closer to the table. Who told the staff I no longer approve purchases? Nobody said you no longer approve purchases. The supplier was told not to act on my approval. That's one category. What other categories have you changed? He looked toward the screen. Eric. We've tightened a few things. Which things? Client commitments? Expenses, scheduling, staffing, major assignments, training content? Only when it affects sales. Everything affects sales if you decide it does. He exhaled sharply. Can we talk about this at home? No, we're at work. That's never stopped you from making work personal. You submitted a false description of my authority. I submitted the structure we need. The room became quiet. Not the structure we had, the structure he needed. For what? I asked. To win. I waited for more. He picked up the remote. We need consistency. Committees don't want a married couple debating in front of them. They want one person accountable. The certification says that person is me. The preference paperwork says that. It isn't preference paperwork. It's a factual certification. Carrie, you're getting hung up on language again. No, I'm finally listening to it. He stepped around me and opened the door. I have to finish these slides. I stayed beside the table. Release the vest. Not today. I'm telling Ben not to use the damaged one. Fine. We'll have to remove that portion from the rehearsal. Then remove it. You're reducing the quality of the exercise to prove you control $600. He looked at me from the doorway. I'm protecting cash until we know whether you can help close this contract. Then he walked away. I stood there with the television glowing behind me. The sentence was ordinary enough that someone passing the room might not have noticed it. Whether I could help, not whether I could design the work, not whether I could deliver it, whether I could provide the qualification and signature that helped him close it. I went back to my office and called the supplier. Please release the vest order, I said. The woman hesitated. Our account note says Mr. Miles must approve it. I'm the majority owner and the purchase is within the approved equipment budget. I understand, but we need one clear instruction. You have one. I have two. That was the problem in its simplest form. I told her to leave the order on hold while I resolved it. Then I opened our internal policy folder. The purchasing policy still listed both Eric and me as authorized approvers. Either of us could approve ordinary equipment within the budget. Larger purchases required both signatures. Eric hadn't changed the policy. He had changed what employees and vendors believed. That was easier for him. A written change would have needed my approval. I printed the policy and took it to Ben. He was kneeling beside an equipment case, sorting rolled bandages. Don't use the torn vest, I said. Okay, the replacement is on hold. He looked up. Are we changing the scenario? Not yet. Use the lighter mannequin for rehearsal tomorrow. I'll adjust the lift sequence. That won't match the hospital setup, I know. He sat back on his heels. I don't want to get in the middle of anything. You aren't. It kind of feels like I am. That was the wider cost. Eric's version of our structure wasn't confined to a proposal. It was making employees choose which owner's instructions were safe to follow. You follow the written safety procedure, I said. No damaged equipment. If anyone asks, tell them I gave that direction. Ben nodded. I returned to my desk and made a list. Purchasing, staffing, scheduling, training content, client commitments. I added account access, vendor instructions, and final approval. The objective had changed. I wasn't trying to get my biography restored anymore. A corrected paragraph wouldn't fix what Eric had done. Before I signed anything, I needed to know whether the certification was true. I emailed him the list. Please identify any operational authority you have changed, limited, or reassigned, and provide the effective date and written approval for each change. I copied our general company account again. Then I set a response deadline for noon the next day. At 11:45 the next morning, he still hadn't answered. He was in his office with the door open. I could see him reading email and moving between spreadsheets. At 11:58, a reply appeared. No governing authority has been formally changed. Temporary workflow controls were implemented to support cash preservation and consistent project management during the finalist period. He had copied the general account. I read the first sentence again. No governing authority had been formally changed. That answered one question. Eric's instructions to the staff and suppliers had no approved basis. Our written policy still controlled. I still had authority to approve the vest. The second sentence created another question. I replied, please confirm whether the temporary controls limit my authority to approve budgeted operational purchases. He came into my office instead of answering. You wanted a response. I gave you one. I asked a direct question, and I explained the situation. You said no authority changed, formally, then my approval remains valid. He pressed his lips together. You're trying to trap me with wording. I'm trying to order safe equipment. The vest isn't the point anymore. I agree. He shut my door. What do you want me to write? The truth. I wrote the truth. Can I approve a budgeted operational purchase without your permission? He looked at the locked desk drawer. This week? Under our policy. You know what? Fine. Yes. Please put that in the email. You're standing 3 feet away from me. The supplier has conflicting instructions. I'll call them. You already did. To hold one order. You told them no purchase could proceed without your personal approval. He rubbed the side of his neck. I was trying to keep spending under control. Then propose a policy change. We don't have time for a board meeting every time something comes up. There are 2 owners. We're both here. Carrie, stop. I waited. He pointed toward my computer. You have your answer. No formal authority changed. Then I'll send the supplier the policy and release the order. He gave one short laugh. Do what you want. That's not permission. I know. His eyes stayed on mine. For the first time since I found the proposal, Eric had said something clear. I opened the purchasing policy while he was still standing there. At the bottom were both our signatures. I attached it to an email for the supplier. I included the approved budget page and my purchase authorization. Then I copied Eric. Granite Resolve's written policy authorizes either owner to approve this purchase. No amendment has been adopted. Please release the order. I pressed send. Eric watched me do it. You made your point, he said. I completed a purchase. He left without closing the door. The supplier replied 20 minutes later. Documentation received. Hold removed. The replacement vest will ship today. That was a practical win. It was also the first time I had forced one of our written rules to hold against Eric's private instructions. Ben was loading folded tables into the back of our van when I told him, the vest is coming Monday, so we can keep the original scenario? Yes. He set one table upright and checked the latch. Good. Then he looked toward the upstairs windows. Do I still send purchase requests to Eric? Send them according to the written policy. Operational equipment can come to me. What if he says something different? Ask him to put the change in writing. Ben's eyebrows lifted slightly. All right. I knew what he was thinking. Employees notice trouble long before owners admit it exists. Your job isn't to choose between us, I said. Your job is to follow the policy. That helps. He closed the van doors. I went upstairs carrying the torn vest. I put it on the conference table where Eric would see it. At 1, Holly emailed a finalist checklist. Each company had to submit its final presentation deck by noon on the day of the showcase. The live exercise would begin at 6. Certifications had to be complete by 8. The checklist included a separate line for my operational control form. The wording beside it was plain, required for eligibility. I called Holly again. This time, I knew exactly what to ask. If I don't sign the certification, does Granite Resolve lose the veteran preference or become ineligible for the contract? The proposal becomes ineligible. Even if the technical score is high enough without the preference? Yes, you applied through the qualifying veteran owner track. The control certification is a mandatory condition of that submission. Does not signing affect the company outside this hospital bid? No. Our decision applies only to this procurement. Would it affect any earlier contracts? No. Is there a penalty for declining to certify? Not by itself. We don't require anyone to sign a statement they can't make. I rested my pen against the checklist. What happens if the submitted management description conflicts with the certification? That depends on the conflict. One says the qualifying owner controls daily operations. Another says the president has final authority over staffing, training delivery, client commitments, and operational changes. Holly didn't respond immediately. "Are you reading from your submission?" she asked. "Yes." "Which document?" "Management capacity. I heard a keyboard." "All right, I have it open." She read silently for several seconds. Then she said, "I see the issue. What does the hospital expect me to do? I can't advise you whether to certify. That's your decision." "I understand. If the management description is inaccurate, you may submit a correction before the deadline. If it's accurate, you need to determine whether you can truthfully sign the certification. Would correcting it make us ineligible? Not automatically. But the correction would need to reflect the actual arrangement, not just different wording. And if the actual arrangement doesn't qualify, then it doesn't qualify. That was useful and incomplete. The hospital wasn't demanding that I sign. It was demanding that the signed statement be true. The problem couldn't be repaired by changing a chart if Eric continued controlling the decisions behind it. Holly cleared her throat. "Carrie, does Eric know you're asking these questions? He knows I'm reviewing the submission. That isn't what I asked." "No, I haven't discussed this call with him. I'm going to document that you requested clarification. Will that be shared with him?" "Not as a separate notice, but you're both authorized contacts now. Any correction request or eligibility decision will appear in the portal." "Understood." I also need to say this. If the hospital asks a finalist to clarify control, both owners may be required to answer. You shouldn't assume this can remain an internal matter. I looked through the glass wall. Eric was laughing on the phone. I don't assume that anymore. After we hung up, I wrote down what Holly had confirmed. Without my signature, only this bid became ineligible. Signing falsely was not required. A correction had to match reality. The deadline was 8 in the evening at the showcase. I placed the notes inside the leather portfolio. Then I opened the company calendar and counted the remaining workdays. We had 9. 9 days to determine whether the company described on paper could be made honest in practice. That was more complicated than correcting my title. If Eric restored my authority only long enough to obtain the certification, the statement would still be misleading. I needed to know whether he accepted my control or merely needed the appearance of it. At 3, we held the first full showcase rehearsal. Eric dimmed the conference room lights and stood beside the television. Ben played the role of a hospital department supervisor. Another employee timed each segment. Eric's opening ran long by 6 minutes. When my section came up, he stayed beside the screen. "I'll transition into implementation," he said. "Carrie, take it from the staffing slide." I stood. The first slide showed 4 training groups rotating through a 2-day cycle. "We'd begin with department leads," I said. "Not because they need the longest class, but because they need to know what their staff will be asked to do." Eric interrupted. "Keep this high level. I've used 1 sentence." "I know." "I'm reminding you about time," I continued. The second group would include staff members assigned to movement and accountability. We don't assume every employee has the same physical ability or response role. Ben raised his hand as if he were a committee member. What happens if a department is short-staffed during training? We adjust group size and run a second session. The schedule includes reserve instructor hours for that. Eric stepped forward. What Carrie means is we build flexibility into delivery. I looked at him. He gave me a small nod, telling me to continue. Ben asked another question. Who approves a schedule change? I do, I said. Eric answered at the same time. Our project director. The room went quiet. Ben looked from Eric to me. I kept my voice even. Who is the project director? Eric lowered the remote. We'll define that in the final agreement. The proposal already defines it. This isn't the time. It's a rehearsal for questions the hospital may ask. He turned to the employee holding the timer. Pause us. The timer stopped. Eric walked to the conference room door and shut it. We need one voice, he said. I agree. Then don't challenge me in the middle of a run-through. You answered a question assigned to my section because your answer created confusion. My answer matched our written policy. Your answer made us sound divided. We are divided. Ben looked down at his notes. Eric noticed. Let's take 10 minutes, he said. Everyone left except us. The torn vest lay on the table between two stacks of handouts. Eric picked it up. You got the new one released. Yes, I saw. You also confirmed in writing that my authority wasn't changed. I confirmed there wasn't a formal amendment. That means the current policy stands. For purchases. For operations. No, it means we haven't documented every temporary adjustment. Then document them. You're enjoying this. I stared at him. You think I enjoy checking whether my husband removed my authority without telling me? I think you enjoy being right. I'd rather be wrong. He dropped the vest. We have 9 days. Can we please focus on winning? I am focused. Then stop asking questions designed to damage us. The questions don't cause the damage. He walked over to the window. Below us, a forklift moved pallets behind the plumbing store. What did Holly say? He asked. I hadn't told him I called. How do you know I spoke to her? I saw your number on the portal activity. She confirmed the certification is mandatory. We knew that. She confirmed a correction has to match the real control arrangement. He turned around. Did you tell her there was an inconsistency? I asked how the rule works. Carrie. She opened the management document while we were speaking. His face lost color. You had no right to raise this without me. I'm the person being asked to sign. You've put the whole bid under scrutiny. No. The submission did that. He picked up the remote and pressed the power button. The television went black. We can fix the description. I need the practice fixed. What does that mean? It means staff follow my operational decisions. Vendors follow my approvals. Training content isn't changed for sales without my agreement. My role is stated accurately. Anything else? I want a written authority schedule before I certify. He stared at me. You're making demands now? I'm defining the role you're asking me to swear I hold. He stepped closer. $480,000 is sitting in front of us, and you want to have a control argument. The hospital wants the answer. The hospital wants a signature. No, you want the signature. For several seconds, the only sound was the heating vent above us. Then someone knocked on the door. Ben leaned inside. Do you want us back? Eric looked at me. In a minute. Ben closed the door. Eric lowered his voice. Don't embarrass me in front of the staff again. Then don't contradict my authority in front of them. He returned to his office. The rehearsal resumed without him. I ran my section, answered the timing questions, and corrected 2 equipment placements. We finished 11 minutes early. That was another answer. The presentation didn't become weaker when I spoke. It became clearer. Just before 5, Eric sent a calendar update titled Final Showcase Agenda. I opened it. His opening segment had grown to 25 minutes. The casualty exercise still listed him as lead. My 10-minute implementation section was gone. In its place, the agenda said, Operational Overview, Eric Miles. I walked into his office with my laptop, put my section back. He didn't turn from his screen. The agenda is more efficient this way. You removed me after I asked for accurate control. I consolidated the presentation. You reassigned my section to yourself. I can cover implementation. You interrupted the first sentence when I covered it. He closed one spreadsheet and opened another. We need to reduce transitions. There were 2. The committee is evaluating the firm, not us individually. Then why does your name appear beside every section? He finally looked at me. Because I'm the strongest presenter. That wasn't the question. It's the answer. I set the laptop on his desk. The hospital expects the qualifying owner to exercise actual control. Removing me from the presentation creates another inconsistency. You'll be there. Doing what? Answering questions if they come up. Will I have authority during the exercise? He picked up his coffee. Why are you asking me? Because your agenda says you're leading it. That doesn't remove your authority. Then put my role in writing. He took a slow drink. You've become very interested in paperwork. I've become interested in what you're doing with my name. He set down the mug. Your name is helping this company qualify for a major contract. My work is supposed to help it qualify. Your work is in the proposal, under your name, not all of it. I waited. He looked away first. I'm not changing the agenda today, he said. Why? Because I don't trust you to stay on message. What message? That we're prepared. We aren't prepared if you can't answer basic operational questions. His chair rolled back. There. That's why. The truth? The way you say things. I stood still. Eric came around the desk and lowered his voice. If you tell the committee we aren't aligned, they'll drop us. If they see 2 different control structures, they may drop us anyway. Then don't create 2 structures. I didn't. He picked up my laptop and held it toward me. We are 1 week away. I need you to stop treating me like the opposition. I took the computer. I need you to stop making decisions that require me to oppose you. I returned to my office. 5 minutes later, a hospital portal notification arrived. Holly had added a venue walkthrough for Monday morning. Each finalist could bring 2 representatives. The purpose was to inspect the simulation space, confirm equipment placement, and test presentation files. Eric forwarded the invitation to Ben. He didn't forward it to me. I was already an authorized contact, so I had received it directly. I accepted. Eric appeared in my doorway almost immediately. Why did you respond? Because I'm attending. Ben and I can handle the room setup. The exercise uses my plan. I need him to move equipment. Then all 3 of us can go. The invitation says 2. Take me. I need Ben. Then I'll meet you there and observe. That's not how finalist access works. I'm an authorized owner. He stared at me. You're trying to force this? Yes. At least that answer left him with nothing to reinterpret. Monday morning, we arrived at the hospital in separate cars. Eric had left our house early without waking me. He sent a message from the office saying he and Ben were taking the van. I packed my tape measure, floor plan, and a small notebook. Then I drove myself. The conference and simulation center occupied a newer section behind the main hospital building. The hallways were wide, but the room assigned to the showcase had 2 fixed counters and a narrow side entrance. Holly met us outside. She looked at all 3 of us. The invitation allowed 2 representatives. I'm here as the qualifying owner, I said. I won't handle equipment. Eric smiled at Holly. We had a communication mix-up. No, I said. I received the portal invitation and accepted it. Holly looked from him to me. Then she opened the door. Fine. Please stay within the marked finalist area. We have another group coming in 40 minutes. The room had stackable chairs along one wall. A projector hung from the ceiling. At the far end, black curtains separated the conference section from the simulation space. Holly showed Eric the presentation controls. The system will be locked during the showcase, she said. I'll load each finalist's approved deck from the portal. No outside laptop connections after noon. Eric nodded. Can we bring video files? If they're submitted and cleared in advance. I looked around the simulation area. Colored tape marked the vehicle entrance, casualty locations, and treatment point. The treatment point was directly beside the main access lane. I opened my floor plan. "Who placed this?" I asked. Holly came over. Our facilities team used the finalist instructions. "Which instructions?" She checked her tablet. "Granite Resolve's equipment diagram." I looked at Eric. He was speaking quietly to Ben near the projector cart. "Can I see the uploaded diagram?" I asked. Holly turned the tablet toward me. The file showed the treatment area where I was standing. My original plan placed it along the interior wall, away from the access lane. When was this uploaded? Friday afternoon. I had spent Friday answering client emails and preparing the equipment list. Eric had changed the diagram after removing my speaking segment. I walked the route from the marked entrance to the back wall. The distance wasn't the main problem. The fixed counter narrowed the lane halfway through. A wheeled stretcher could pass, but not if responders gathered at the treatment point. "Ben," I said, "bring the lighter mannequin." He looked at Eric. "Do it," Eric said. Ben carried the mannequin from the van and placed it on a folding stretcher. I asked him to stand near the treatment mark. Eric moved beside him. "Holly, would you push the empty equipment cart from the entrance to the back wall?" She raised an eyebrow. "The cart? I need to check clearance." She took the handle and pushed. At the narrowest point, Eric had to step aside. Ben shifted the stretcher. Its rear leg crossed into the access lane. The cart stopped. Holly looked at the floor. "This path has to remain open," she said. "Yes." Eric pointed toward the curtains. "We can pull the treatment point forward during the exercise. That puts it closer to the entrance," I said. "Temporarily, it increases congestion. It's a staged event." "The room isn't staged. That counter is fixed." Holly stepped away from the cart. "What's your proposed layout?" I opened my notebook and showed her the original plan. Treatment along the interior wall. Command near the conference divider. Keep the center lane open from the entrance to the rear door. Can it fit? Yes. I took out the tape measure. Ben helped me move the stretcher. We measured the distance from the wall, then marked the corners with spare blue tape. I asked him to walk the equipment cart through again. This time it passed without stopping. Holly stood near the entrance and watched. "Do it with 2 responders," she said. Eric joined Ben. They carried the mannequin toward the treatment point while Holly moved the cart through the lane. Nobody had to step aside. Holly entered the measurements on her tablet. "This layout is approved," she said. "I'll have facilities reset the marks." Eric brushed dust from his sleeve. The original placement would have worked once the room was active. Holly looked at him. It didn't work while the room was empty. She said it without sarcasm. Then she turned to me. "Please upload the corrected diagram by noon tomorrow. I will." Eric answered at the same time. "We will." Holly wrote something else on her tablet. "Who has final authority over safety changes during your exercise?" Eric said, "I do." I said, "I do." Ben stopped rolling the tape measure. Holly looked at both of us. "That needs to be resolved before the showcase." Eric smiled again. "Carrie has technical stop authority. I have presentation lead." "That isn't what you just said," I told him. I misunderstood the question. Holly didn't move. I asked who has final authority over safety changes. "Carrie," Eric said. I waited. He looked at me. "Carrie does." Holly entered the answer. "Then include that in your final slide deck." That was the useful result. My authority over the live exercise now had to appear in material controlled by the hospital. Eric couldn't remove it without creating another visible conflict. The gain came with exposure. Holly had witnessed the disagreement directly. There was no longer any way to tell her our problem was a harmless wording issue. We used the remaining time to check equipment placement. I tested the route from the command position to each casualty marker. Ben confirmed the replacement vest had arrived and would be ready for the full rehearsal. Eric stayed near the projector. When Holly showed him how to advance the simulation clock, he asked whether the presenter could pause the scenario. "Only for an actual safety concern," she said. "Who decides that?" She looked toward me. "Your designated safety authority." Eric didn't ask again. As we left, Holly stopped me in the hallway. "I'll send the revised room plan to both authorized contacts." "Thank you." "And Carrie?" "Yes?" "I need one answer before the final deck is loaded." She kept her voice low, but Eric was only a few steps away. Are you exercising control during this project, or are you trying to recover it? Eric turned his head. I felt him watching. I'm determining that now, I said. Holly nodded once. That determination has to be complete before you certify, I know. Outside, Eric told Ben to drive the van back to the office. Then he waited beside my car. The morning was cold and clear. Our breath showed between us. You made us look unstable, he said. The layout was wrong. I'm talking about Holly's question. You answered it incorrectly. I answered as presentation lead. She asked about safety. You could have let me clarify. I did. You said I had authority after she challenged you. He put both hands into his coat pockets. Do you understand what happens if she flags our eligibility? We have to resolve the inconsistency. We lose the contract. Only if the inconsistency is real. It wasn't real until you started pushing it. I unlocked my car. You changed the room diagram without telling me. It looked cleaner. It blocked the access lane. We would have adjusted. When? During rehearsal. This was the rehearsal. He moved in front of the driver's door. I need you to hear me. If this contract goes away, we may have to cut hours. We haven't won it. We planned around it. I didn't approve that. You approved the bid budget. That isn't the same as spending anticipated income. We haven't spent it. You just said jobs depend on it. He looked across the parking lot. People have been counting on more hours. Did you promise them? I told them what the contract could mean. Did you promise them? I gave them a realistic picture. That meant yes. He had taken an opportunity we didn't have and turned it into an obligation I was now expected to protect. I stepped around him and opened my door. This is our marriage, too, he said. I stopped. What does that have to do with the hospital? Everything lately turns into a test of whether I respect you. That's because you keep asking me to ignore evidence that you don't. I'm asking you not to burn down our future over an organizational chart. The chart matches your actions. Then tell me what gets you back on board. Restore my section. Restore the correct management description. Confirm my authority to the staff and vendors. All before the showcase? Yes. That's not reasonable. It's the arrangement you want me to certify. He looked past me at the hospital entrance. You used to understand that sometimes I had to make things look simple. I used to believe simple still meant true. I got into my car. Before I could close the door, he said, "Submit the corrected floor plan. I'll put your safety authority in the deck. And my speaking section? We'll discuss it." He walked away. At the office, I uploaded the corrected diagram myself. Holly approved it within an hour. The portal recorded my name as the submitting owner. Eric saw the notification. That afternoon, he called the staff into the conference room and announced that all hospital-related communication had to go through him. Then he looked directly at me and added, "No exceptions." Nobody moved. Ben stood near the end of the table with his hands around a paper coffee cup. The other employees looked at their notes. I kept my voice calm. Technical and safety communication still comes through me. Eric remained standing beside the television. I just said all hospital communication comes through me. You can coordinate submissions. You don't control my operational decisions. This isn't a discussion. It needs to be. He looked around the room. Everyone can get back to work. Chairs moved at once. Ben carried his coffee with him. Nobody looked at me on the way out. That was the first professional cost I felt in the room. For years, employees came to me when something had to work. They trusted my answer because I didn't guess. Now Eric had turned that trust into a risk. Following me could put them against the president. Following him could put them against the written policy. After the door closed, I stayed seated. "You don't give orders over me," I said. I gave instructions to the staff. That excluded the majority owner from communication about her own work. You went directly to Holly twice. I'm an authorized contact, and now she thinks we don't know who controls the company. We don't agree about who controls it. He gathered the extra agendas. You are making that true. It was true before I noticed. Eric carried the papers to the door. If you keep challenging me in front of employees, you'll destroy their confidence. Confidence in whom? In us. He left before I could answer. 20 minutes later, Ben appeared beside my desk. He held a printed email. "Can I ask you something?" "Yes. Is this still right?" He placed the page in front of me. The email was from Eric. He had sent it to the staff the morning after our proposal went in. The subject line said, "Hospital Project Structure." I read the first paragraph. I kept reading. Eric had told them he would approve schedules, instructor assignments, equipment purchases, exercise changes, and all hospital communication. My name appeared once more. I would complete required ownership documents. That email was the proposal structure in practice. Not a sloppy paragraph, not a chart designed to look simple. He had told our employees I existed to support him and sign the forms. "When did you receive this?" I asked. "The day it says." "Why didn't you mention it?" Ben looked uncomfortable. "I thought you knew. Did everyone get it?" "Yes. Have you been following it?" "For hospital work, mostly." "What does mostly mean? We send things to Eric first. Even technical changes? He usually asks you." That was how Eric made it look functional. He collected the authority, then came to me privately for the knowledge. "Why are you showing me now?" Ben pulled out the chair across from my desk. "Because of the hours." "What hours?" He looked toward Eric's office before sitting. He said if we got the hospital project, we'd all move to full schedules. That part is possible. He said it was likely enough to plan around. I placed the email flat on my desk. "What did you plan?" I stopped taking outside classes for next month. Ben sometimes taught workplace safety courses through another small firm. We allowed it when our schedule was light. Did Eric ask you to do that? He said he needed availability. Did he guarantee the hours? Not exactly. What did he say? Ben rubbed the edge of the paper with his thumb. He said, "Hold the month for us. This is as close as these things get." I closed my eyes for a second. "We're one of 3 finalists," I said. "I know that now. You knew we were finalists. I didn't know the ownership paperwork was still an issue." "Who told you it was?" "Nobody." I heard the meeting. He meant the disagreement through the conference room wall. "Ben, the contract hasn't been awarded. You shouldn't turn down paid work based on it." His face tightened. "I understand that. I'm not blaming you. It kind of sounds like you are. I'm telling you the information you should have received." He stood. "So should I take other work if it comes?" "Yes. Even during the hospital dates? If we win, we'll build a schedule based on actual availability. Eric said we needed to show we were ready. We need to be honest about who is committed." He picked up the email. "Are we still a real finalist?" "Yes. Are you going to sign the owner form?" I looked at him. "I'm reviewing whether the statement is accurate." He nodded slowly. "That sounds like maybe." "It is." He left with the email. I sat at my desk and looked at the room around me. The shelves held training binders I had built. The bottom drawer contained equipment receipts, instructor evaluations, and old client notes. My worn field notebook sat near the pencil cup. I still used it when I needed to reduce a problem to facts. Eric had used my silence in 2 directions. He showed clients a company led by him. He showed me a company we owned together. Whenever those versions touched, I repaired the gap. Now an employee had lost outside work because Eric had sold anticipated income as something close to certain. I had helped create the conditions for that, too. I knew how Eric talked when he wanted commitment. I had watched him turn possibilities into plans for years. When the plans worked, I made them possible. When they failed, I adjusted schedules and protected the staff from the worst effects. They had learned to trust his promises because I usually covered them. That afternoon, I asked everyone to return to the conference room. Eric was on a client call. I didn't wait for him. Ben sat in the same chair. 2 employees remained standing near the door. The 4th had joined by phone from a job site. "I need to clarify the hospital schedule," I said. "We have not been awarded the contract. No hours are guaranteed." One employee asked, "Should we keep those weeks open?" "Only if you can afford to." If outside work is available, take it. We'll confirm staffing after an award." Ben looked down. Another employee said, "Eric told us the committee invited us to final negotiations. The hospital invited 3 firms to a showcase. So it isn't final negotiations?" "No." The employee on the phone asked, "Does that mean the projected hours sheet is wrong? What projected hours sheet?" Nobody answered. Ben reached into his folder and handed me another page. It showed weekly schedules beginning the Monday after the expected award. Every employee had full hours. The hospital contract number appeared across the top. At the bottom, in smaller print, it said planning draft. Eric had distributed it 3 days earlier. I held the page at both corners. "Treat this as a draft only," I said. "Do not make financial decisions based on these hours." The room became very quiet. One employee folded her arms. "Why are we hearing this now? Because I learned today what you were told. Are you and Eric not talking?" The question landed harder than it should have. "We're reviewing the project structure. That's not what I asked." "No," I said. "We aren't communicating well." Nobody spoke. I could have protected our image. I could have said we were under stress or that all businesses adjusted during a large bid. I didn't. "If you have questions about your current schedule, send them to both owners," I said. "Any change needs written confirmation." The meeting ended without the usual side conversations. One employee left her coffee on the table. Eric returned from his call as Ben was walking out. "What was that?" he asked. I corrected the hospital's scheduling information. His eyes moved to the projected hours sheet in my hand. "Where did you get that?" "The staff." "You had no reason to alarm them. They thought these hours were nearly guaranteed." "I labeled it a draft. You told Ben to hold the month. I told everyone to be available. He turned down paid work. That was his decision. You made the contract sound certain. I made it sound promising. You left out that my certification is unresolved." His mouth tightened. "Because it shouldn't be unresolved. It is. You stood in front of our employees and told them we might fail because you won't decide whether you control your own company. I told them the truth. You damaged us." "No, I stopped them from taking more damage." He took the schedule from my hand. "We need to talk at home. We can talk here. I'm not doing this here again." That evening, he didn't heat soup. He sat at the kitchen table with a legal pad and our household bills arranged in a row. Mortgage, heating oil, car insurance, property tax. "We can cover these without the hospital contract," I said. "That isn't the point." "What is?" "The company pays both of us. If this falls apart, it affects this house. The bid can fail for 3 reasons that have nothing to do with me. But there's one reason we control: the accuracy of the certification. Your willingness to sign it." He tapped the legal pad. "We have employees expecting work. We have a mortgage. We have a company that needs this step. You told employees to expect work before we had it. Because leaders create confidence. Leaders don't ask people to budget around imaginary money." He pushed the bills aside. "I don't recognize you right now." I looked at him. He'd said it softly. That made it worse. "You recognize me when you need the work done. I recognize my wife when she doesn't assume the worst of me." I read your email. "What email?" "It was an internal workflow. It was the truth you didn't tell me." He stood. "I'm sleeping upstairs. Our bedroom is upstairs. The spare room." He gathered his phone and charger from the counter. "You don't have to do that. I need one night where every sentence isn't evidence." He carried his things up the stairs. A few minutes later, I heard the spare room door close. That was the relational cost. We had slept apart during deployments, training, storms, delayed flights, and one winter when I had pneumonia. We had never chosen separate rooms because we couldn't stand beside each other. I remained at the kitchen table. The bills stayed in front of me. Eric had arranged them to show what could be lost. But the house wasn't in immediate danger. The company wasn't about to collapse that night. The urgent danger was that I still wanted him to come back downstairs badly enough to make the problem disappear. For 24 years, belonging with Eric had meant adapting. When the Army moved me, he adjusted. When I came home different, he gave me time. When civilian life made me uncertain, he spoke for us. Somewhere along the way, I started believing gratitude required surrender. I gathered the bills and returned them to the drawer. Then I took out my worn field notebook. On one page, I wrote what I had been trying to save: the hospital bid, the employees' expected hours, Eric's public confidence, our image as equal partners. On the next page, I wrote what was actually mine to protect: my signature, my service record, the employees' honest information, the company's real operational standards, my ability to live with what I certified. Getting my speaking section back was no longer enough. Even restoring a few approvals wouldn't be enough. Eric could perform cooperation for 1 week, collect my signature, then return to the structure he had already announced. I stopped asking how to help Granite Resolve win. I started asking what Granite Resolve would have to become before I could let it win in my name. Upstairs, the floor creaked as Eric moved around the spare room. I closed the notebook and opened my laptop. Then I created a document called Conditions for Accurate Certification. I wrote until after midnight. The document was 2 pages. It didn't ask Eric to praise me. It didn't ask him to admit why he had changed the proposal. It didn't ask the hospital to decide which one of us was right. It described the control arrangement I could truthfully certify. I would approve operational staffing, training content, safety decisions, equipment, and changes to delivery. Eric would remain president and lead sales, client development, and financial planning. Major commitments would require both of us, as our company agreement already required. The hospital biography and management description would be corrected. The staff and vendors would receive the same information. My operational section would return to the showcase agenda. None of that created new authority. It described the authority I was supposed to have already. I saved the document but didn't send it. The next morning, Eric's car was gone before I came downstairs. The spare room door stood open. The bed was made tightly with the blanket tucked under the mattress. He had taken his charger. At the office, I arrived before anyone else. I unlocked the equipment room and checked the replacement vest. The stitching was clean. The straps held when I pulled them. I fitted it over the heavier mannequin and secured the buckles. Then I reviewed the full exercise. Eric had focused on what the committee would see. I focused on what each person would do. The scenario started with a power failure. A vehicle struck the covered entrance. 2 casualties were visible. A third was discovered after the initial response. The first response leader needed to establish control away from the entrance. One team assessed the danger area. Another maintained the access lane. The treatment point stayed against the interior wall. I assigned roles based on the employees available. Ben would lead the assessment team. Another employee would manage accountability. I would serve as operational lead and safety authority. Eric could present the scenario and announce the time changes. That gave him a clear role without giving him decisions he wasn't prepared to make. I sent the rehearsal plan to everyone, including Eric. The subject line said, "Final Operational Rehearsal." At the bottom I wrote, "This plan reflects the safety authority confirmed during the hospital walkthrough." Ben arrived carrying a box of gloves. He read the plan on his phone before taking off his coat. "Are we running the whole thing?" "Yes." Eric said we were only checking timing. "We're checking decisions too." He looked toward the empty hallway. "Did he approve this?" "It's within my operational authority." Ben nodded. He didn't look relieved. But he carried the new vest into the conference room without asking again. That mattered. By 8:30, everyone was ready. Eric arrived at 8:40. He walked into the conference room while I was marking the access lane with blue tape. "What is this?" "The final operational rehearsal." "I didn't schedule a full run." "I did. We have client work. The staff calendar is clear until 10. I need Ben on inventory. He'll do it after 10. Eric held up his phone. "You sent this to everyone before talking to me." "Yes. That's exactly what you accused me of doing." "No. I identified my authority and used the existing schedule. I didn't tell anyone yours was gone." He read the plan again. "You made yourself operational lead." "I am operational lead. You made me the announcer. You're presenting the scenario. I'm directing it, not the response decisions. His eyes moved around the room. Everyone had gone quiet. He lowered his voice. Can I speak to you outside? After rehearsal, Carrie, we have 80 minutes. He stood there for several seconds. Then he took off his coat and placed it over a chair. Fine, let's see it. We began. Eric delivered the opening description. He spoke smoothly and kept within the planned time. When the simulated power failure started, Ben moved to the command point. Assessment team with me, he said. 2 employees followed him. The accountability lead stayed near the interior wall and began checking names against a staff list. Eric stepped toward the entrance. Send everyone forward, he said. Ben looked at me. Follow the plan, I told him. Eric stopped. I'm introducing pressure. You introduce conditions. The response lead makes decisions. He gave a small shrug and stepped back. Ben sent one person to check the entrance. The second person kept the lane clear. I watched the mannequin's straps as they moved it. Nothing shifted. At the 4-minute mark, Eric announced the 3rd casualty. The employee playing a hospital supervisor pointed behind the fixed counter. Ben started toward it. Stop, I said. Everyone froze. One leg of the folding stretcher hadn't locked fully. I walked over and pressed it into place. That's a safety stop, I said. Reset your carry. Ben checked both legs. Locked. Continue. Eric looked at the timer. We just lost 20 seconds. We prevented a collapse. It's a mannequin. The equipment decision is the same. Ben and the other employee lifted again. This time, the stretcher stayed level. The access lane remained open through the entire response. At the end, the accountability lead reported every assigned person located. Ben transferred command back to me. I ended the exercise. The timer showed 14 minutes and 12 seconds. Our earlier partial run had taken more than 19. Ben set down the clipboard. That felt better. Why? I asked. We knew who was deciding. The employee at accountability nodded, and nobody crowded the entrance. Eric picked up the timer. We still paused. For a safety issue, I said. At the hospital, a pause makes us look unprepared. Ben adjusted the stretcher leg. The hospital said, Carrie has stop authority. He used the correct fact without looking at me. Eric placed the timer on the table. Yes, I'm aware. We reset and ran the scenario again. This time, the stretcher locked properly. Eric announced the 3rd casualty earlier than planned. Ben changed his team assignment without pulling anyone from the access lane. I watched the accountability board and let him work. We finished in 13 minutes and 38 seconds. No blocked lane, no missed casualty, no equipment failure. The staff were breathing hard, but nobody looked confused. That was the first visible success of the new strategy. The work improved when the stated authority matched the person making the decisions. I asked everyone to gather near the conference table. What needs correction? I said. Ben pointed to the command marker. Move it another foot from the divider. The accountability lead said, the 2nd casualty card needs larger print. Another employee suggested placing extra gloves near treatment. I wrote each change in my notebook. Eric didn't offer anything. When the others left, he closed the conference room door. You made me look irrelevant. You presented the exercise. I could have done that from a recording. You also controlled the simulation clock. You gave every meaningful decision to yourself. No, Ben made most of them. Under your authority. Yes. He laughed once. At least you're saying it now. I've been saying it. No, you used to say we were partners. We can be partners without pretending our duties are identical. Your document says I control sales and planning. I looked at him. He had opened the file. I hadn't sent it. It's on the company drive. In my working folder. I was looking for your rehearsal notes. You found them in the file called Conditions for Accurate Certification? He ignored that. This is an ultimatum. It's a description. You're dividing the company. The proposal already divided it. I corrected the direction. He sat on the edge of the table. You want me to tell every employee you outrank me. This isn't rank. That's how they'll hear it. They'll hear who approves operational work, And if I disagree, then we follow the company agreement, which you interpret, which we both signed. He looked down at the torn vest still lying near the projector cart. If I agree to this, do you sign? If it becomes true, what does that mean? It means you don't announce one structure and operate another. For how long? I waited. The question told me more than he intended. For as long as it remains the company's structure, I said. So forever. Unless we both change it honestly. He stood. You don't get to redesign the entire business a week before a showcase. I'm not redesigning it. You're using the certification to force control. The certification asks whether I have control. You own most of the company. That didn't stop you from telling staff to report only to you. He walked to the door. I have a client call. Send me written corrections to the document by 3. I'm not negotiating a constitution. Then confirm whether it's accurate. He left. I updated the exercise diagram and wrote the rehearsal results into a short operational note. I sent it to the staff and copied Eric. At 11, Ben forwarded a question from Holly. She wanted confirmation that our final exercise would use the approved treatment location and that the designated safety authority would remain unchanged. Eric had received the same message but hadn't answered. I replied through the portal. Yes, Granite Resolve will use the approved interior treatment location. Carrie Stewart will retain safety stop authority for the exercise. Holly answered within minutes. Confirmed for venue control. The hospital now had my role attached to the room plan, the exercise, and the presentation controls. Eric couldn't quietly erase all 3 without being noticed. At noon, he sent me a private message. Stop communicating externally until we resolve this. I replied through the company account. The hospital requested confirmation from both authorized contacts. I answered within my stated operational role. He didn't respond. At 3, my deadline passed. At 3:20, Eric emailed the conditions for accurate certification document back to me. He had made changes. He accepted my authority over exercise safety and training content. He struck out staffing, equipment, operational scheduling, and delivery changes. He restored my biography but reduced my speaking section to 3 minutes. At the bottom, he added 1 sentence. Final executive authority remains with the president. I printed his version and placed it beside the certification. Then I sent back a single question. Under your proposed structure, can I override your operational decision without your approval? His answer arrived at 4:12. No. It was the clearest answer he had given me. I closed the email and looked at the leather portfolio in my locked drawer. Eric had finally identified exactly what he needed from me. Not control, certification without control. And now he knew I had a written standard for refusing to pretend otherwise. The next morning, my access to the presentation folder had changed. I could open files, but I couldn't edit them. I tried the rehearsal deck first, read only, then the staffing slides, read only. The final agenda was the same. Eric had changed the permissions at 7:12. I walked into his office. Restore my editing access. He kept typing. You can send corrections to me. That isn't our process. It is for the final deck. You changed it this morning. I'm protecting version control. From me, from conflicting edits. I stood beside his desk. You accepted my authority over training content. Then you removed my ability to correct it. I accepted your technical input. That isn't what the document says. It's what I meant. Restore access. No, he continued typing. What did you upload to the hospital? The current deck. Did it include my safety authority? Yes. My speaking section. You have 3 minutes. The agenda still shows no segment. I haven't updated the agenda. Did you restore my biography? A shortened version. Does it describe my operational role? It describes your background. I waited until he looked at me. Show me the submitted file. You have portal access. The hospital portal showed a new upload from Eric. Final showcase deck. I opened it from my own computer. The title slide displayed Granite Resolve beneath a photograph of the hospital entrance. Eric's biography occupied most of the 4th slide. It described him as the firm's president, project director, and architect of its emergency training system. My biography appeared beneath his. 2 sentences. I was identified as a veteran co-founder who provided compliance support and exercise review. The operational chart still placed Eric above every function. My name appeared on the exercise slide beside Safety Stop Authority. That was the only correction he had kept. I reached the agenda slide. Eric would present every section. I wasn't listed. At the end was a slide titled Questions. My name appeared there in small type with the other staff members. He had given me 3 minutes in conversation and removed them in the actual submission. Holly returned the file 36 minutes later. Her portal note was visible to both of us. Deck conflicts with confirmed operational roles. Please identify the person exercising training content, authority, and final operational control. Corrected file required by noon on showcase day. Eric came out of his office holding his phone. What did you tell her? Nothing this morning. She rejected the deck. She requested a correction. Because you made her suspicious. The deck contradicts the role she confirmed. He lowered his voice. I gave you safety authority. The certification is about operational control. We are not putting an ownership dispute on a presentation slide. Then don't submit a structure you can't certify. He looked toward the front office. 2 employees were sorting class materials within hearing distance. Conference room, he said. I followed him inside. He shut the door and set his phone on the table. I need a yes or no. To what? Are you going to sign? I'll sign an accurate certification. That isn't an answer. It's the only answer I have. You've had days, and every day you've shown me the statement isn't true. He pulled out a chair, but didn't sit. If I put your section back, will you sign? Not by itself. If I restore your biography, not by itself. What if I send the staff your control document? You rejected most of it. I can reconsider. Do you mean it? I mean, I'm trying to save the contract. Then no. His hand struck the top of the chair, not hard enough to damage it, hard enough to make the legs jump. You don't get to keep moving the line, I'm not. Actual control has always been the line. You approved this bid. I approved an accurate plan. I didn't approve your management statement. You built the budget. For work, I expected to control. You knew I was president. I didn't know you were telling everyone that made my approval optional. He walked to the window. If we lose, there won't be enough work to keep everyone at current hours through the fall. Then we tell them now. No, you tell them. I looked at his back. What? You want full authority? Take full responsibility. He turned. I'm calling a staff meeting at noon. I'll explain that the contract is ready to move forward, but the qualifying owner has concerns about signing. That makes it sound awarded. I'll say we're finalists. Say your management description conflicts with the certification. I'm not humiliating myself in front of my employees. You're willing to humiliate me. I'm telling them who controls the decision. That was his strongest move. He couldn't sign for me. He couldn't change the hospital rule. He couldn't make his management description true. But he could put 4 employees between my hand and the page. At noon, everyone gathered in the conference room. Eric stood at the head of the table. I sat near the middle. He had printed the projected hours sheet again. A copy rested in front of each employee. We need to discuss the hospital opportunity, he said. We remain a finalist for the $480,000 contract. He let the amount sit in the room. Our proposal is strong. Our exercise is strong. We have one unresolved eligibility document. Ben looked at me. Eric continued. Because we applied as a veteran-owned firm, Carrie must sign a control certification. She has not done that. One employee raised her hand slightly. Why not? Eric turned toward me. I think Carrie should answer. Everyone looked at me. I placed both hands on the table. The certification requires me to state that I exercise actual operational control. Do you? Ben asked. Under our written company policy, yes. Under the structure Eric submitted and has recently directed, no. Eric interrupted. That's our disagreement. No. That's what the documents say. He faced the staff. I've offered to clarify Carrie's role. You offered 3 minutes and safety stop authority. That's not all I offered. You wrote that I can't override your operational decisions. The room went silent. One employee pushed the projected schedule away. So what happens if you don't sign? She asked. The bid becomes ineligible. Do we lose these hours? They were never awarded. She looked at Eric. You told us to plan for them. I told you to prepare. You gave us schedules, planning schedules. Ben rubbed both hands over his face. Can't you two just fix the titles? It isn't about titles, I said. Then what do we need? An honest operating structure. Eric leaned against the table. What Carrie means is she wants final authority. The hospital requires it for the certification. And if I disagree with giving you that, he asked, then the company shouldn't submit a certification saying I have it. He nodded slowly. There it is. He looked around the table. I want everyone to understand this clearly. I'm prepared to move forward. Carrie is deciding whether her control concerns are more important than this opportunity. That isn't a fair description, Ben said. Eric looked surprised. Ben continued. You wrote the proposal. Did Carrie see the management part? No, I said. Eric's face hardened. I'm not holding a trial. Then don't call people in here to assign blame, Ben said. Nobody spoke after that. The meeting ended early. One employee asked me privately whether current hours were safe through the next month. I showed her the actual work schedule and answered honestly, yes, for the next month. After that, we would need new work or reduced hours. It wasn't the reassurance she wanted. She thanked me anyway. By 3, 2 employees had removed their names from the hospital availability sheet. They had outside work they could accept. That was a real loss. Our proposed staffing plan now had gaps. Eric sent me a message. Your disclosure caused this. I replied, your promises caused it. At 4:30, Holly requested a joint call. Eric joined from his office. I joined from mine. Holly's voice came through both speakers with a slight delay. I need to resolve the deck issue, she said. Who controls training content? I do, I said. Carrie does, Eric said. Who controls staffing? Eric answered first. I do as president. I said, our written policy gives me operational staffing authority. Holly paused. Who has final authority if you disagree? Eric said, I do. I said nothing. Holly asked, Carrie, is that your understanding? It's his proposed structure. It isn't one I approved. Then I cannot treat the control question as resolved. Eric leaned toward his speaker. We're having an internal disagreement. It will be resolved before the deadline. That's acceptable, Holly said. But I need to be clear. The hospital will not mediate it. Either the certification and actual arrangement align by 8 or the bid is ineligible. Understood, Eric said. After the call, he came into my office. You heard her. We have until 8 on showcase night. I heard. 2 people just pulled out of the staffing plan. They accepted work that exists. If we win, we'll be short. Then we use available instructors and adjust. That increases cost? Yes. So now your honesty is costing money before we've even lost. The cost was already there. He leaned against my desk. I'm going to ask you one last time. Help me get us through the showcase. Sign the certification. After we win, we'll sit down with a counselor, a business advisor, anyone you want. You want me to sign first and fix the truth later. I want you to protect our marriage and our employees while we work this out. I looked at him. He had finally placed all 3 weights on the same side. Our marriage, the employees, the anticipated income. He spoke quietly. If you refuse, don't pretend it's just business. You're making a choice about us. He left before I answered. That night, he stayed at the office. I ate alone at the kitchen table. His place remained empty. The household bills were back in the drawer, but I could picture every amount he had written. I thought about the employees who might lose hours. I thought about the staffing gaps. I thought about Eric sleeping on the narrow office couch because he wanted me to feel the distance I was creating. Then I took the leather portfolio from my work bag. The certification was still inside. I read it once more. The statement didn't ask whether I loved my husband. It didn't ask whether employees needed work. It didn't ask whether the money would help us. It asked whether I exercised operational control. Under the structure Eric insisted on, I did not. I placed the form back in the portfolio without signing it. For the first time, I accepted the full price of that blank line. If nothing changed, Granite Resolve would lose the bid. Eric didn't know I had decided. I closed the portfolio and carried it upstairs with me. The next morning, Eric was waiting in the kitchen. He had come home early enough to shower and change. His office clothes were folded over the back of a chair. A document lay beside my coffee mug. "I revised the authority schedule," he said. I read it standing up. The first paragraph gave me approval over staffing, equipment, scheduling, training content, and delivery changes. It used almost every phrase from my document. Then I reached the final paragraph. The arrangement would take effect immediately and remain in place through completion of the hospital procurement process. I set the page down. It expires after the award. We can review it then. That makes it temporary. It gives you what you asked for. No, it gives me temporary authority long enough to sign. He pulled out a chair. "Sit down, Carrie. I'm fine. I was up most of the night trying to solve this. So was I. I accepted your conditions until the hospital makes its decision, because we need flexibility afterward. Why? We may need to change roles during delivery. Then the certification would stop being true. Not if we agree. You already said you want final authority. I want the ability to run the company." I slid the paper toward him. "This doesn't resolve anything." His eyes went to the leather portfolio under my arm. "Did you bring the form home?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because it requires my signature." "I know what it requires." He stood. "Are you planning to withhold it?" "I'm reviewing the arrangement through the deadline." That was true. I had made my decision based on the arrangement he insisted on. If the truth changed, I would review it. He didn't need to know the blank form was no longer a threat I was afraid to carry out. "The showcase is tomorrow," he said. "I know. We need the certification tonight so Holly can mark the file complete. The deadline is tomorrow at 8. Waiting makes us look unstable. Submitting a false statement would be worse. It isn't false if I give you the authority. For one day. I can remove the expiration language. And what happens after the award? We work it out. That's the answer you keep giving me. Because married people work things out. Married people also tell each other when they've changed the business." He picked up the document and folded it once. "If you wanted to punish me, you found the right way. I don't want to punish you. You're holding $480,000 over my head. The hospital is offering the contract. I'm holding a form. You know what that form does?" "Yes." He looked at me for a long moment. "Then you know what you're doing to us." I carried my coffee upstairs and got dressed. At the office, I opened the hospital portal and checked every required item. Insurance was complete. Pricing was complete. Staff qualifications were complete. The exercise plan and room layout were approved. The final deck remained pending. The certification was the only incomplete eligibility item. I called Holly. "I need to verify the submission status," I said. "I'm looking at it now. Are there any other mandatory documents missing?" "No. If the certification remains unsigned at 8 tomorrow, what happens? Granite Resolve becomes ineligible for the award. Can Eric sign it? No. It requires the qualifying owner's personal certification. Can anyone at the hospital waive it? No. Can it be submitted late? No. What if the committee prefers our proposal? The committee's score doesn't override eligibility." I wrote each answer in my notebook. Holly waited. "Anything else?" she asked. "Yes. If the form remains unsigned, does the hospital make a finding that the company committed misconduct? No. We record that the eligibility condition wasn't completed. Does that affect other bids? No. Only this procurement. Will the showcase still proceed if the form is pending? Yes. Finalists may complete required certifications until 8. The technical presentation begins earlier. That removed the last uncertainty. I didn't need to accuse Eric of anything. I didn't need Holly to decide whether he had diminished me. I didn't need the staff to choose a side. The hospital had one rule. My signature activated eligibility. Without it, the proposal stopped there. Holly, I may send you a written explanation of the inconsistency. You may. Do you need one if I don't sign? No. What would happen if I uploaded Eric's internal authority instructions? We would review them as part of the control determination. That was the easier shortcut. I had his staff email. I had his management file. I had his written answer that I could not override him. I could place all of it in the hospital portal and force the procurement team to examine our marriage through company records. Eric would lose control of the story before he entered the room. I could tell myself it was transparency. Part of it would have been revenge. I closed the attachment window. I won't submit internal communications, I said. I'll make my own certification decision. That's your responsibility, Holly said. She didn't praise me. She didn't offer protection. She confirmed the rule and left the choice where it belonged. After the call, I printed the portal status page. I placed it in the leather portfolio behind the unsigned certification. At noon, Eric called me into the conference room. He had restored my access to the final deck. Review it, he said. I opened the file. My biography was longer than before. It mentioned Army service and emergency planning experience. It still described my company role as operational support. My safety authority remained on the exercise slide. The management chart placed Eric at the top. My speaking section was still gone. You didn't fix control, I said. I restored your background. You kept yourself as final authority. I'm president. Then I can't certify the opposite. You have authority over the parts that matter. According to whom? According to this, he pointed to the safety slide. One exercise doesn't define company control. He sat down. What if I remove the management chart? The proposal still contains your management statement. We can correct that after the showcase. The deadline applies to corrections too. I know. Then correct it now. He looked at the screen. I'm not submitting a deck that makes me look like a salesman working for my wife. There it was. Not a concern about efficiency, not confusion about titles. He believed my real role reduced him. I closed the file, then leave it. His head lifted. You're approving the deck? No, I'm done asking you to describe me accurately. That sounds like you've made a decision. It means you know what needs correction. He stood. Carrie, if you let us walk into that room and then refuse to sign, that isn't restraint. That's humiliation. You can withdraw the bid today. I'm not withdrawing. You can correct the structure. I've offered enough. Then those are your choices. He shook his head. No. There's a third choice. You stop making our entire future depend on whether you get credit. I picked up my notebook. The company's eligibility depends on control, not credit. I'm submitting the deck at noon tomorrow. I know. And I'm presenting it. I know. I expect the certification before 8. I didn't answer. He watched me leave. The showcase day began with rain. I arrived at the office at 7. The streets were dark and water ran along the curb outside the plumbing store. The leather portfolio went into my work bag. I checked the certification one last time. No marks, no initials, no signature. At 8, I met the staff for a final equipment check. Ben tested the replacement vest. The straps held. We counted pressure dressings, gloves, casualty cards, tape, and batteries. Eric came in near 9. He wore the dark suit he'd chosen weeks earlier. Everyone needs to be at the hospital by 4:30, he said. Ben asked, who is running the response? Eric looked at me. Carrie has safety authority. I'm leading the presentation. That wasn't the question, Ben said. I answered. You lead the assessment team. I control operational and safety decisions during the exercise. Ben nodded. Eric didn't correct me. At 10, he uploaded another deck. Holly returned it with the same control question. At 11:15, he changed the operational chart. He removed the lines connecting staff to either owner. It showed 2 boxes at the top, president and majority owner. My biography still said I provided support. Holly accepted the deck for presentation at 11:48. Acceptance meant the file would display. It did not mean the certification was true. At noon, the presentation system locked. Eric could no longer change the deck. Neither could I. He came into my office at 12:10 carrying the certification page he had printed from his computer. "Sign this copy. I have the original." "Then sign the original." "The deadline is 8. "What are you waiting for?" "The actual control arrangement. The deck shows you as majority owner. Ownership isn't control." He placed the copy on my desk. "Think about Ben. Think about everyone whose hours depend on us. I have. Think about this house. I have. Think about our marriage." I looked at him. "I have done almost nothing else." He waited. I returned the copy without signing it. At 4, we loaded the van. I drove separately. The hospital parking lot shone under the lights. Rain moved across the pavement in thin sheets. Inside, Holly checked our names and directed the staff toward the simulation room. The corrected treatment area was marked along the interior wall. The access lane was clear. I inspected the stretcher, casualty cards, equipment cart, and command position. Everything matched the approved layout. Eric tested the microphone. His voice filled the room. "Granite Resolve is ready." A few committee members entered and took their seats. Near the front sat a gray-haired man in a dark jacket. He kept an encrypted training drive beside a yellow legal pad. I noticed the old medic insignia near his collar, but he was speaking with Holly and didn't turn toward me. I couldn't see his face clearly. Holly went to the presentation console and loaded the approved file. "Your deck is locked," she told Eric. "I control playback from here. If you need a slide held, ask me." Eric nodded. Then he came to the equipment table where I had placed my leather portfolio. He set a black pen beside it. "We still have time," he said. I closed the flap over the unsigned certification. "Yes," I said, "we do." Holly called the room to order. Eric straightened his jacket and walked toward the microphone. He began with the company's history. The first slides were clean. Photographs of training rooms, equipment, and employees appeared behind him. Eric spoke without notes. "Granite Resolve was built to bring disciplined emergency planning into ordinary workplaces," he said. "We don't hand clients a binder and disappear. We develop systems their people can actually use." That part was true. Then he reached the leadership slide. "As president and project director, I oversee client strategy, staffing, and final delivery. My biography appeared beneath his. Carey supports compliance, quality review, and exercise safety. He didn't mention that I had designed the hospital plan. He didn't mention that I had authority over training content." He pointed toward me without turning his body. "She'll be available for technical questions." I remained beside the equipment table. The black pen still lay on top of my portfolio. Eric moved through implementation quickly. He explained my training schedule as if he'd built it. He used my example about department leads. He described reserve instructor hours in almost the same words I had used during rehearsal. Nobody interrupted him. When the casualty response section began, Holly dimmed the conference lights. Hospital staff volunteers moved into their marked positions. The equipment cart stood near the entrance. The heavier mannequin wore the new vest. Eric removed his suit jacket and folded it over a chair. "This scenario tests leadership under uncertainty," he said. "Speed matters. Hesitation creates casualties." Holly started the simulation clock. The room lights went out. Emergency lighting came on near the floor. A recorded impact sounded through the speakers. Eric pointed toward the entrance. "All available responders move forward. We need immediate casualty contact." Ben looked at me. That was not the approved response. I stepped closer. "Establish command away from the entrance," I said. "Send the assessment team only. Keep the access lane clear." Eric kept facing the committee. "We're demonstrating a rapid surge response. The entrance hasn't been assessed. It's simulated. The decision is still unsafe." Terry Clark raised his hand from the front row. Holly stopped the simulation clock. Eric looked toward him. "Yes?" Terry leaned forward over his yellow pad. "Why are you sending every available responder into an unassessed impact area?" Eric smiled. "The exercise rewards decisive action. That wasn't my question." Terry's voice was quiet. Who maintains the rest of the building while everyone is at the entrance? Eric picked up the remote. We adjust staffing as conditions develop. How? Through central leadership. Where is your command point? Eric pointed near the entrance. Terry looked at the blue tape on the floor. That position blocks emergency access. We can move it. Your safety authority just told you where to place it. Eric glanced at me. Carrie focuses on conservative procedure. I focus on not sending people into an unknown hazard, I said. He gave me a tight smile. This is my section. Terry sat back. Then answer the operational question. Eric turned toward the committee. In a real emergency, you don't always have time to build a perfect command structure. You move toward the problem. I spoke from beside the equipment table. You assess the problem before adding people to it. He lowered the microphone slightly. Carrie, the approved plan keeps the lane open. We're adapting. You're repeating the decision we corrected at the walkthrough. The room was silent. Eric looked at Holly. Can we continue the clock? Holly kept her hand near the control panel. Not until the safety concern is resolved. Eric turned toward me. Are you stopping the exercise? I'm directing the response according to the approved plan. He laughed. It was a small sound, but the microphone caught it. Carrie likes procedure. Terry's hand went still on his legal pad. Eric continued. She had military experience, yes, but that doesn't make every situation a deployment. I didn't answer. He should have stopped there. Instead, he looked at the committee and said, she couldn't handle real combat. Nobody moved. The words traveled through the speakers and came back faintly from the rear wall. Terry stood. He removed his glasses and folded them. What did you say? Eric's smile disappeared. I said, this is a civilian hospital exercise. No. The sentence after that. Eric looked toward Holly. We're getting away from the proposal. Terry stepped into the open area between the first row and the simulation floor. My name is Terry Clark. I'm the hospital's clinical advisor for this procurement. I retired from the Army as a combat medic. Then he looked directly at me. I served with Carrie during one of her deployments. I recognized him fully then. The gray in his beard had hidden part of the face I remembered. His voice hadn't changed. Terry, I said. He nodded once. Good to see you, Carrie. Eric stared at him. Terry turned toward the room. I was the medic on a mission recorded in a cleared training file. I provided that file to the hospital this morning because I intended to ask Carrie privately whether we could use it in future emergency instruction. He looked at me again. I didn't know I would need to identify it here. I hadn't known the recording existed in a cleared form. I remembered the radio traffic. I remembered the road. I remembered Terry refusing evacuation until the other wounded soldiers were loaded. I did not remember anyone preserving my voice. Terry continued. I won't play it without your permission. Eric stepped toward him. This has nothing to do with our proposal. Terry looked at Eric. You made her combat service part of your answer. I made a bad choice of words. Yes, you did. Holly stood beside the presentation console. The file has been cleared for training use, she said. It's loaded but not part of the finalist deck. Carrie, it will not be played unless you consent. Everyone waited. I could have said no. Part of me wanted to. That recording belonged to a day I didn't discuss at business dinners. I didn't want it turned into a performance. Then I looked at Eric. He wasn't sorry yet. He was afraid of losing the room. Terry, I said, does the file identify anyone who hasn't been cleared? No. Does it include graphic content? No. Radio traffic only. I looked at Holly. Play it. She inserted Terry's encrypted training drive into the controlled system and opened the cleared file. A low hiss came through the speakers, then an engine. A voice called for the convoy to move through an intersection. My own voice answered, negative. Hold the lead vehicle behind the wall. The recording crackled. Another voice said the route had been cleared. I answered, it isn't clear. Movement on the south side. Reverse the first vehicle. Someone asked where to move. Second vehicle to the north wall. Keep the intersection open. Clark, report. Terry's younger voice came through the speakers. 2 urgent at Vehicle 2. 1 walking. I can move. My voice answered. Get both urgent behind the wall. Walking casualty follows you. I'm staying with them. You're bleeding, Terry. I can work, then work while you move. A few people in the room shifted. The recording continued. Another vehicle requested permission to enter the intersection. My answer came immediately. Do not enter. Hold west. We have an exposed lane. Someone asked about evacuation. Use the east lot. Keep the main route open. Mark the landing area and send me the time. 7 minutes. Clark, you and both litter casualties go first. Terry's recorded voice objected. I have 1 more to check. Another medic has him. You're on that aircraft. The final section was quieter. I coordinated the vehicle order, confirmed the treatment point, and kept the exposed intersection empty until evacuation arrived. There was no speech, no dramatic command, just short instructions, reports, corrections, and acknowledgments. The file ended after a voice confirmed that Terry and 2 wounded soldiers had been moved to evacuation. Holly stopped playback. The room stayed silent. Terry put his glasses back on. That was Carrie, he said. She redirected the convoy before another vehicle entered the exposed intersection. She organized treatment and evacuation while the rest of us were trying to understand where the danger was. He tapped his chest lightly. I was one of the people she got out. Eric's hands hung at his sides. Terry turned to him. So don't tell a medical room she couldn't handle real combat because she corrected your unsafe decision. One person near the back began clapping. Another joined. Then most of the room did. I didn't move. The applause lasted several seconds. It felt less like praise than pressure against my skin. I raised one hand. The room quieted. Thank you, I said. But that recording doesn't decide who controls Granite Resolve today. I walked to the front table and picked up the leather portfolio. The hospital proposal says Eric holds final authority over operations. His instructions to our staff say the same thing. Eric stepped toward me. Carrie, we can discuss this privately. We have discussed it privately. I opened the portfolio and removed the certification. The hospital requires me to state that I exercise operational control. I don't, under the structure Eric submitted and continues to claim. He reached for the paper. I held it at my side. Don't do this here, he said. You chose the structure here. I offered to change it. Until the award. His eyes moved toward the committee. That was a draft. It was the only written authority you offered. Holly checked the clock near the presentation system. It was 7:54. She spoke to both of us. The certification may still be submitted before 8. Eric held out the black pen. Sign it. We'll correct everything tomorrow. No. The word came out quietly. He stepped closer. We have 6 minutes. I know. You heard the applause. They understand who you are now. That doesn't make the certification true. I'm telling you I accept your authority. For how long? He looked around the room. Carrie. For how long? We'll work that out. I folded the unsigned form once and placed it back inside the portfolio. Eric followed me to the equipment table. Think about the employees. I did. The money, I did. Our marriage, I did. His voice dropped. You're throwing all of it away to prove a point. No. I'm refusing to certify your point as mine. At 7:58, Eric took a blank copy from his folder. He signed his own name beneath the company information and pushed it toward me. I'm acknowledging your control. There's no place for your signature. Then write yours. No. He placed the pen in my hand. I set it on the table. The minute changed. 8 o'clock. Holly closed the certification window on the presentation system. She faced the committee and the finalists. The mandatory Veteran Owner Operational Control certification has not been submitted. Under the procurement rule explained at the finalist briefing, Granite Resolve is ineligible for the award. Eric looked at the closed portal screen. Then he looked at the leather portfolio under my hand. The blank signature line remained inside it. Nobody spoke for several seconds. Then Holly said, Please continue packing your equipment. The committee will complete the remaining procurement steps without Granite Resolve." Her voice was professional. She didn't look pleased. She didn't look sorry. The rule had taken effect. Her job was to record it. Eric walked to the presentation console. "We were 2 minutes late," he said. "You weren't late," Holly answered. "The certification wasn't submitted. I signed an acknowledgement. You aren't the qualifying owner." Carrie was standing here. Yes, she could sign now. The deadline has passed. Eric looked at me. "Tell her you intended to sign." I didn't. His face changed. Until then, I think some part of him believed I had been waiting for the room to empty. He thought I would still protect the result after making my point. Holly removed our deck from the screen. "The portal is closed," she said. "There is no late correction process." Eric put both hands on the edge of the console. "This is $480,000 over one form." "No," Holly said. "It's an eligibility condition stated in the request, briefing, checklist, and portal." She picked up her tablet. "Your company may compete in future procurements. This decision applies only to this one." Then she walked toward the committee table. Authority didn't choose my side. It held the rule we had both received. Ben began packing the equipment cart. The other employees folded the stretcher and removed the casualty cards. I put the black pen into the supply box. Terry waited near the front row. When Eric went to collect his jacket, Terry approached me. "I'm sorry that happened in public," he said. "Which part?" "All of it." He looked toward the encrypted drive in Holly's console. "I brought the recording for a private conversation. I didn't plan that, I know. I should have asked before identifying the mission." "You asked before playing it." "That doesn't answer whether I overstepped." I closed the leather portfolio. "Send me the clearance information and the full file." "I will. I'm not agreeing to future use tonight. I wouldn't expect you to." He nodded toward the simulation floor. "Your corrected layout worked. Ben and the team made it work. You gave them a plan they could follow." That was all he said about my service. He didn't ask what happened in my marriage. He didn't offer to speak to Eric. He didn't tell me I had done the brave thing. He gave me his card. "Call when you're ready to discuss the file." I placed it inside my notebook. "Thank you, Terry." He nodded once. "Take care, Carrie." Then he left. Eric watched him go. "You enjoyed that," he said. "No." "The applause?" "No." "Having him correct me?" "No. You expect me to believe that?" "I expected you to tell the truth before we came here." He picked up his jacket. "You let me present for 2 hours knowing you wouldn't sign. You had until 8 to make the certification true. You knew I wasn't changing the company in front of a committee. Then you knew I couldn't sign." Ben rolled the equipment cart between us. "Van's ready," he said. Eric stepped aside. In the loading area, rain struck the metal awning hard enough to cover conversation. Ben secured the stretcher inside the van. "What happens to us?" he asked. "We finish the work we have," I said. "Current hours are safe through next month. After that, we may need to reduce schedules unless we bring in other work." Eric stood near the driver's door. "Which will be harder now." Ben looked at him. "Because we lost?" "Because our qualifying owner chose not to complete the bid." I closed the van's rear door. "We lost because the control statement wasn't accurate." Eric laughed without humor. "There she goes." Ben pulled the latch to check it. "The hospital asked who had control," he said. "You both gave different answers." Eric stared at him. Ben continued, "I'm not choosing sides. That's what happened." He walked around the van and got into the passenger seat. For once, someone used the correct fact in front of Eric. Eric drove away without me. At home, he went directly to the spare room. I heard the shower run. Then the door closed. We didn't speak again that night. The next morning, he sent an email to the staff. Granite Resolve was not selected for the hospital contract after Carrie declined to complete the required veteran owner certification. Existing work will continue while leadership evaluates next steps. I read it at my desk. Then I walked into his office. "Correct this." "Which part is false?" "You blamed the loss on my signature without explaining why I couldn't sign." "You could have signed." "Not truthfully. That's your opinion. It's supported by your proposal and your instructions. He opened his calendar. I'm not arguing again. This email becomes part of the company record. So, it's inaccurate. He looked up. Write your own email. I will. I returned to my desk and sent a reply to everyone. The required certification stated that I exercised operational control. The management structure submitted to the hospital gave final operational authority to Eric. I did not sign a statement that contradicted the submitted structure. Current schedules remain unchanged through next month. Future hours will be discussed individually using confirmed work only. Eric came out before I finished closing the email. You made me look dishonest. I described the documents. You could have handled this privately. We tried that. You copied the entire staff. You copied them first. He stood beside my desk. What now? You remove me as president? No. That answer surprised him. I opened the company agreement. You remain president for current client relationships and approved commitments. For now, for current work. What does that mean? We are suspending joint bidding. He stared at me. You can't decide that alone. I can refuse to use my veteran qualification. I can also refuse new operational commitments made without my approval. So you're freezing the company? No. We continue existing work. We pursue ordinary work we can staff honestly. We don't submit another proposal that describes you as final operational authority while using my status to qualify. He folded his arms. And what do I have to do to earn permission? This isn't permission. Sounds like it. We need accurate company biographies, defined operational authority, and one structure used with staff, vendors, and clients. The same conditions again? Yes. What about the hospital money? It's gone. His eyes moved toward the window. You can say that very calmly. It's still gone. People are going to lose hours. Yes. Because of you? No. I own my decision not to sign. You own the structure that made the certification false. He didn't answer. I continued. We meet with each employee this week. We show them confirmed work, no projected contracts. You're enjoying control now. I'm doing the work you promised them someone would do. He went back into his office and closed the door. The employee meetings took 2 days. Nobody shouted. That almost made them harder. We showed each person the current schedule and the work already under contract. One employee had enough outside work to reduce her hours with us voluntarily. Ben kept his current schedule for the next month, but resumed accepting other classes. The remaining schedules would likely shrink after that. I didn't promise otherwise. One employee asked whether Granite Resolve was closing. No, I said, but we're smaller than the hospital proposal made us look. Eric sat beside me without speaking. Another asked who approved training decisions now. I do, I said. She looked at Eric. He said, Carrie does. It was the first time he stated the fact without adding a limit. After the last meeting, he returned to his office and stayed there until dark. At home, we continued using separate rooms. We spoke about practical things. The furnace needed service. The recycling went out on Thursday. The van required an oil change. We didn't discuss the recording. We didn't discuss the applause. We didn't discuss our marriage. 3 days after the showcase, Terry sent the cleared audio file and its release information. I saved both in a private folder. I listened only to the first 30 seconds. Then I stopped it. Hearing my younger voice in the hospital had felt unreal. Hearing it alone at my desk felt private in a way the room had not. I wrote Terry a short reply. I received the file. I'll review the full recording before deciding on instructional use. He answered, understood, nothing more. Holly sent the formal procurement notice that afternoon. It stated that Granite Resolve had been removed from consideration because the mandatory certification was not submitted by the deadline. No accusation, no misconduct finding, no mention of the presentation. I filed it with the proposal records. Eric read the notice and closed his office door. An hour later, he sent another email to the staff. The subject line said, correction. His first version read, I regret that recent communications may have created confusion about Carrie's role. I walked into his office. That isn't a correction. He looked exhausted. I said, I regret it. You blamed communication. I'm trying to move forward. Then state what you did. You want a confession. I want the same accuracy you expect from my signature. He turned away from the computer. What exactly do you want me to say? I'm not writing it for you. Of course not. If I write it, you'll repeat words you don't accept. He rubbed both hands over his face. I submitted the structure because I thought it gave us the best chance. And then I told the staff I was in charge. And then I expected you to sign anyway. The room stayed quiet. That was the first unqualified account he had given me. Put that in your own words, I said. He stared at the blank email for several minutes. I left him there. At 6:12, a new message reached the staff. I need to correct my earlier statement. Carrie did not cause the hospital loss by failing to support the company. I submitted a management description that gave me final operational authority, and I directed staff and vendors to treat me that way without her approval. I then expected her to certify that she controlled operations. That expectation was wrong. The hospital bid became ineligible because the structure I insisted on did not support the required certification. I read it twice. There was no excuse after it. No sentence about pressure, no reminder of the lost money. Eric had copied the general company account. I saved the correction with the other records. Then I left the office without going into his. At home, Eric was sitting at the kitchen table. He had printed the correction email. The page lay beside his hand. I sent it, he said. I saw. I should have sent it the first time. Yes. He looked toward the stairs. I'm not asking to move back into the bedroom. I took off my coat. Good. I called a counselor. That stopped me. For the business? For us? When? Next Tuesday, if you agree. Did you tell them why? I said I used your veteran status to qualify for a contract while presenting myself as the person in control. He said it without softening it. I hung my coat beside the door. I'll go Tuesday. His shoulders lowered, but he didn't smile. Thank you. This doesn't fix the business, I know, and going once doesn't fix us. I know that too. He returned to the spare room that night. The next week was mostly schedules. The hospital work disappeared from our planning board. The empty space covered nearly 2 months. Ben accepted 3 outside classes. Another employee reduced her hours with us before we had to ask. The others kept working through the jobs already booked. We cut expenses at the office. No new equipment unless safety required it. No paid chamber dinner. No printed promotional packets. Eric canceled a subscription he used for sales leads. The lost contract didn't destroy Granite Resolve. It made the company smaller. That difference mattered. During our first counseling appointment, Eric tried to explain the pressure. We were close to the biggest contract we'd ever had, he said. The counselor asked, does the size of the contract change whether the certification was true? Eric looked down. No. Then explain what you did without starting with the money. He sat with that for a while. I wanted to be seen as the person who built the company. I kept my hands folded in my lap. He continued. I thought Carrie's ownership qualification would get us into the room. I thought my presentation would win it. What did Carrie's actual work contribute? The counselor asked. Most of the training plan. Most? All of it. I looked at him. He didn't turn toward me. I changed her biography because I thought the committee would trust one leader more than 2, he said. Then I told the staff to treat me as that leader. When she questioned it, I acted like she was threatening everyone. The counselor looked at me. What do you need from him now? Consistent action when there isn't an audience. Eric nodded slowly. The appointment ended without an apology speech. In the parking lot, he asked, do you want to get coffee? No, I'm going back to work. All right. He didn't make me feel cruel for saying no. That was the first test. 2 days later, a warehouse client called about changing a scheduled evacuation exercise. The client wanted to cut the floor assessment and add a longer management presentation. Eric took the call in his office. Before, he would have agreed and asked me to rebuild the exercise afterward. This time, he came to my desk. They want to remove the floor assessment, he said. Why? They're short on time. Then shorten the management presentation. They asked for the opposite. The assessment is the useful part. He nodded. Can I tell them we won't remove it? You don't need my permission to say what we require. I'm asking for your operational decision. Keep the assessment. He returned to his office. I heard him tell the client, Carrie directs training delivery. She won't approve removing the floor assessment, but we can shorten the classroom portion. He didn't say we had decided. He didn't call it his recommendation. The client accepted. Eric sent the revised schedule under both our names and identified me as operational lead. That was the second test. At the next staff meeting, he distributed a new authority schedule. It matched our written policy. He handled sales, client contacts, and financial planning. I controlled staffing, equipment, training content, safety, and operational delivery. Major commitments required both owners. Eric read the page aloud. Then he said, if I give you an instruction that conflicts with Carrie's operational decision, ask for written confirmation from both of us. Ben raised his hand. Does that include purchases? Yes. Schedules? Yes. Hospital-type proposals? Eric paused. We aren't submitting another preference-based proposal right now. He looked at me. Carrie has suspended those bids. I added, no proposal will use my veteran qualification unless the company structure is accurate in writing and in practice. Nobody argued. We both signed the authority schedule. Then we sent it to the vendors who had received Eric's earlier instructions. The equipment supplier acknowledged the change that afternoon. Correcting the company biography took longer. Eric's first draft still described him as the creator of our emergency training system. I returned it. He removed the phrase. The second draft said I had contributed to program development. I returned that too. On the third draft, he wrote that I had designed Granite Resolve's emergency training methods and controlled operational delivery. His biography described him as president, sales lead, and client coordinator. That's accurate, I said. He nodded. Then use it. We replaced the biographies on our website and in every current proposal template. He did not ask whether that earned back the hospital role. It didn't. Joint bidding remained suspended. Eric continued as president for sales and existing client relationships. He no longer held final authority over operations. I did not restore the structure he had claimed at the showcase. At home, he stayed in the spare room for another month. Counseling continued once a week. Some appointments were quiet. During one, Eric said, I thought her silence meant she agreed with how I represented us. I answered, my silence meant I was tired of correcting you. He looked at me. I know that now. The counselor asked, what will you do when she corrects you next time? Stop arguing long enough to check whether she's right. A week later, he had to do it. He drafted a proposal for a small nursing center. It described him as project director. I marked the phrase, your client lead, I said. I'm project director if I'm responsible for delivery. He stared at the screen. I waited for the argument. Instead, he changed it. You're right, he said. Then he sent the corrected version. That action mattered more than the sentence. Terry's recording remained in my private folder until I could listen to the whole file. One Sunday morning, I put on headphones and sat at the kitchen table. Eric was upstairs. The recording lasted just under 11 minutes. Most of it was routine radio traffic, engines, location checks, short reports. My voice sounded younger but not unfamiliar. Near the end, after evacuation lifted, Terry came over the radio. You still there? My recorded voice answered, I'm here. Thought you lost us for a minute. I didn't. That was all. I removed the headphones and sat quietly. Then I emailed Terry. The hospital may use the cleared recording for internal instruction. No promotional use. No excerpt without the full decision sequence. Please identify everyone by role unless they have separately consented to a name. He replied the next morning. Agreed. I'll send the final training description for your approval before use. He did. The description focused on route control, treatment placement, and evacuation order. It did not turn me into a hero. I approved it. At our next counseling appointment, Eric asked whether I would consider letting him return to our bedroom. Not yet, I said. He nodded. 2 weeks later, he asked again. By then, he had followed the authority schedule through several client decisions. He had corrected 2 people who referred to me as administrative support. He had also stopped using the hospital loss to explain our reduced hours. This time I said, "You can come back, but we're still in counseling. I understand, and the business boundary stays. I understand that too." He moved his things that evening. There was no special dinner. He put his charger on the dresser and asked which side of the closet I wanted. Then he took the other side. We were careful with each other. That wasn't forgiveness completed. It was a personal repair being tested. At the office, our work became quieter. Eric asked before promising dates. I stopped fixing vague commitments without naming the problem. Staff questions went to the person with the actual authority. We earned less than we had expected that year. The employees knew why schedules changed. Nobody received another page of projected hours presented like income. One afternoon, Eric brought me a draft email for a prospective client. "I haven't promised anything," he said. "Can you confirm the delivery dates?" I checked the calendar. The second week works, the first doesn't. He changed the email. "Anything else?" "Identify me as operational lead." He added the line. Then he left the draft with me for final review. If this story moved you, subscribe and let me know where you are watching from. Near the end of the day, Eric stopped at my office door with his coat over one arm. "I'm heading home," he said. "I'll be there soon. Do you need anything?" "No." He nodded and left. I opened the bottom drawer and took out the hospital portfolio. The proposal, formal notice, corrected authority schedule, and Eric's written correction were all inside. The certification still had no signature. I removed it from the portfolio and carried it to the fireproof box near the filing cabinet. Then I returned to my desk. For years, Eric's proposal folders and sales notes had spread across one side whenever he needed room. That half was clear now. His records stayed in his office. Mine stayed with me. The afternoon light reached across the wood. I moved the pencil cup, aligned the current training schedule, and left space for the work waiting tomorrow. Then I closed the unsigned certification inside my fireproof box and placed my worn field notebook on the cleared half of my desk.